trying to put sticks in the ground.
I think someone
Cool.
uploaded.
So we got 8 hours to fucking do whatever. Take a look at our topic list here.
Yeah, how's that list looking?
We've got Andrew suggesting that we talk about the importance of the firmament, a little bit of Yokuden lore, which works really well since we got Felix here.
Yeah.
I can spin some shit about the Magna Gi, and we also had aliens on that docket, but I think we're gonna wait on that one until we can get Ty involved. Or Max, sorry. The structure of Daedric realms is also on that. The shape of the Aurbis and the Marukati selective. So we got a lot to go on there. Let's see. We've also got Kalpas and Chim.
No. You gotta say it like the Hebrew way. You gotta.
Him.
L'chaim?
Yes.
Well, yeah, but without the hla.
I always pronounce it as Kime because I associated that with the Chimer, meaning changed ones.
Yeah, I always just call it chimmed or chim.
I've
always pronounced it Kim because
I like Chim because I can make chimney sweep jokes. Or chim chimney chim chimney.
I like
chim
Chim because I can make chimichanga and chimpanzee jokes.
I was about to say, yeah, and the chimpanzee.
Ooh.
To this date, one of my favorite test images that has ever been created out of my stupidity.
I don't know, man. I'm particularly fond of that one I created of you with your squinty face on the cartoon version of the Vec doing like the when the chim hits you.
Yeah, the fucking
particularly proud of
image. Yeah, that was just such a great collaboration. It was like a meme within a meme within a personal meme. It was phenomenal.
See, you might have done that, but then I've just extended it to a whole other level of Evan only gets profile pictures from me now.
Nice. So of that massive list Evan listed off, where do we want to start? Perhaps with like the shape of the Aurbis and why that's important?
Well, I think actually scrolling through, we can actually kind of start to get a little bit of direction on this chat, which is nice. Because like the follow-up questions that started streaming down, it works to go like broad scope and then start to narrow down into some of the other requested topics.
All right.
I'm just getting a sense of what the fuck that is since I haven't looked at this for a few days.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the post.
I'm just along for the ride.
About adding.
Okay.
There it is.
I mean, we want to start with broad topics.
I got some static coming off someone.
I don't know who.
That was, I think it was Cody.
God damn it.
He stood outside in the void for a minute.
Is it still staticky?
A little bit.
Yeah. Hold on. Come back into creation. There you go. Okay.
Oh God.
Still or
Nope, you're good.
no? Okay. I mean, if we want to broad topics, even though hardly anyone has asked, we can start with my reforging of Orsimer Coda, or is that just?
I think we'll do that as kind of an aside later.
I'm down.
I think the places to start are kind of like the nature of the dream, and then stem that down through the superego and id of Anu Padme to talk about the interplay, and then funnel that into the shape of the Aurbis from Andrew, and then we'll start to use that to kind of talk about Kalpas, so the Kalpic cycle, a little bit about Shim and kind of the understanding of the wheel that turns to an eye. Or Or actually, okay, so let's do nature of the dream, down to interplay, down to shim, and the shape of the orbis, because those actually, they're very interconnected because of the wheel. And then we'll start going from there as my brain starts to digest the coffee that I have in front of me.
Alrighty then.
Beautiful.
So, the dream. Start talking, motherfuckers.
So, basically, it is one of those nice concepts that is
I'm gonna have to crouch
adapted from Tolkien, where it is started off as a song inside the dream of a god, which we get Godhead, and all the people and places and things all have their notes and correspondences and themes and melodies, and it all works out nice and beautifully, and all upheaval and dissonance is also interworked as well, with Sharmats being their thing and being loud brass and drums that is worked beautiful into battle themes and blah 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 blah.
Nailed it.
Crushed it.
You crushed
God,
it.
now people will.
Oh, buddy.
I'm not ready for this pressure.
Who's doing that? Yeah, I mean, you do have the Godhead, and then you have the big Godhead, but the little Godhead is an Amaranth, which is somebody who's completed the walking ways of in their previous life and been able to transcend the dream and make their own. So you got to remember that that is a thing. That's important. The dream is a separate. There's an infinite number of dreams that that go back an infinite amount of time, and this is just one of the new dreams that popped up, and it's a special dream, sure, but it came from a mortal who was able to transcend his reality and create a new reality.
I would amend that. I would amend that a little bit. Who's echoing? Someone's got some.
That's you, Andrew. You're echoing.
Anyway, there are infinite potential dreams. We don't know exactly how many there are.
Okay, but I would say
that's the only clarification I would make to that.
Yeah. The way that I like to disambiguate it all is that Amaranth is it's not so much a place as it is a state of being. It's sort of like the equivalent of enlightenment from Buddhism, where an individual has ascended, the mortal realm, and they're beyond all that now, and so they become this sleeping god that plays out infinite parallels of possibility, of reality. Everything is up in the air and all determinate on basically their internal struggles. And this is especially true of the Godhead that we see the dream of with Tamriel. For disambiguation, I like to call him Ald Anu, or just Anu in all capitals, whichever. The way that we've kind of started to look at it as a community is that the dream is kind of a way of dealing with their mistakes in life. I don't know if somebody else wants to start going off of that anywhere.
I'll go back to how I personally view everything, where it's like, for the math nerds, like cascading downward fractals, where it's separate but connected in the fact that it comes from but is still entirely unique of itself.
Yeah, I would say in a lot of ways it is fractal like. I think there are shells to it.
Well, I think we can kind of draw from that. I mean, I know there's the idea that Yokuda and Akavir are in separate dreams. That Yokuda is the previous Amaranth, and so it's remembered in that way. And then Akavir is the future Amaranth. That's weird because the Godhead that we exist in the Elder Scrolls games doesn't understand Akavir, but because it exists in an Amaranth that stems off of that dream, then it's this weird kind of like a fluidity. I mean, it's
like a premonition sort of thing.
Sort of, yeah. But the Godhead doesn't know how to define it yet because it's not there yet. If that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why invasions into Akavir have largely failed in the past. I mean, I think Riemann tried it. And just wasn't able to do anything worthwhile there. And a lot of that's because the Godhead doesn't know how to define that. Where is Riemann right now? And then if we look at that post, there was a post in Tomorrowland that talks about this relationship between these continents and how those work as amaranths. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
I think one of my favorite looks into how dreams interact was somebody on Reddit. Go to your fucking mic. Somebody was talking with Michael Kirkbride about the way that dreams interact with one another, and sort of Yokuda, Tamriel, and Akavir are three separate dreams that are all interwoven, and it works as this. So Alda Anu can see things through the scope of his dream, which is the arena. It's all about conflict and strife, and this mirrors fairly well what was going on in Yokuda, the previous dream. And so the myth echoes of Yokuda are fairly accurate as we see them, both because we have first-person accounts from the Ragada that came to Tamriel and became the Red Guards, while as Akavir on the other side is a little bit fucked up because we have with Coda an image of love, and that does not vibe with Aldanu. He can't grasp it because his is all about violence, the antithesis of what Jubal, the dreamer of Akavir, had in mind. So everything that we're seeing out of Akavir is twisted through the lens of violence, specifically reach heaven through violence, because Akavir's dogma is reach heaven through love. So that's why all of the lore from Akavir is very strange, very hard to decipher. Why we see a lot of "we eat it to become it" coming through, and why the invasions that came through from Akavir very much so altered Aldanu's perspective. With Riemann, we have a whole order of knights coming from Akavir that change up the way that the construct of the central focus in Tamriel is run. We've got weird shit like the Sayesi Akaviri Potentate that never really gets described the same. He could be a walking snake dude. He could be a human dressed as a snake. He could be a snake dressed as a human. And this is all because the scope is a little bit off kilter when dreams start to interact with each other.
Fair enough, but going to what you were saying earlier about Yokuda and how the Red Guards came over, one thing I'm still struggling with in my own way is two possible interpretations of that. One of which is that, Yokuda did exist and then it was sank, and that is Anu's memory of it. Either it's the dream he came from or something along those lines, previous Kalpa, whatever it is people subscribe to. But a part of me has also thought, well, wait a minute, they didn't really know that the Red Guards were there until they basically showed up one day and said, oh, hi, 1/8 of Tamriel is ours now. And it feels kind of more like an imposition rather than, oh yeah, those people off to the west that we know about. It was like, hi, and then they were just there. They implanted themselves within the dream, which makes me wonder if maybe it's like perhaps an implanted memory, which goes back to what I was sharing with you, Evan, like several months ago about how in Daggerfall, or maybe it was Arena, the Palace of Sentinel has a central spire with 8 smaller spires around it. And we were trying to figure out if whether or not that has to do with securing their place in Tamriel to stabilize themselves within the dream of the Godhead, or if that was basically a challenge of, hey, we took this part, can we take more? Maybe, I don't know. And so these are the two aspects of what the Yokudans or Red Guards really are that even I'm still not sure of at this point. So I'd love to hear some other people's thoughts on that.
Well,
yeah, so we're kind of down to, are they usurping a piece of Tamriel, or are they bringing their influence in such a way that, you know, the structural integrity really has to be there in order for the dream to not collapse.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I'm looking at this article on Tomorrow Today, a model of the Godhead and its contents. And then when we think of Yokuda, okay, it sank, right? It sank into presumably the ocean. What is the ocean? It's made of water. Water is memory, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, if we get into like a psychological sort of sense, there is it being repressed, buried in memories? Because I mean, and this article here suggests that Yokuda is somehow indicative of Anu the Godhead's memories of Nur's murder. Or as a symbol of that, because it's blasted, it's gone, it's not here anymore. And so perhaps the Red Guards are a way for Anu the Godhead to kind of keep hold of some memory of that without. So it's like he's trying to get past it, but kind of holds on, and that's where the influence from the Red Guards comes from.
Which makes something a lot of sense.
All right, yeah, just something of Yokuda to hold on to while trying to move on. Which I mean, I think we can all agree that the guilt or grief of Anu is a huge theme in the Godhead in TES lore in general.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to take this and run with it for a second, because I really like that, because the Red Guards are I think the only truly Anuic, as in static versus Patamaic, changing man. So the Red Guards are the Anuic man, which makes a lot of sense because Anu is the piece, the superego of the Godhead that is buried in grief, that can't get past his faults. So I think we're going to zoom out for a second and talk about the interplay. And I'm going to throw out my interpretation, and then I want to see it either refuted or agreed with, or agreed with but changed a little bit kind of deal. So the way that I choose to look at this is it Jungian or Freudian with this superego self?
That's Freud.
That's Freudian? Okay.
Most definitely.
So I generally don't like Freud, except for this one piece of nicety that we have with the lore. So Aldanu, the Godhead, in his life, this is the event that pushed him to Amaranth. His own personal reach heaven by violence was when he killed his lover, Nur. So within that, he had a psychological split. We have superego, which is the higher self, what we aspire to be, the highest level of our humanity. This is Anu, and that is capital A, lowercase nu. We see that name mentioned in the monomyth, and oh God, what's the other one? A children's
Anuad.
Thank you. Yeah, the Anuid. So we've got Anu on one side, and then Padome on the other, and this is the id of the dreamer, and this is the baser survival instincts, what Freud would have said all of our deviations stem from, and it all combines into Anu, the superego, Aldanu, the self, the dreamer, and Padome, the id. So stemming down into that, we have the interplay between superego and id. And this is the space where everything is made possible, called the gray maybe. So the gray maybe is the second highest level of existence in the Elder Scrolls universe. It's the interplay between the godhead's warring psyche. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and stem back to Akavir, or not Akavir, sorry, Yokuda. And we're going to go ahead and say that Anu is the part of the dreamer that can't get over what they did, while Padme is the piece that wants to forgive itself, that wants to change things, to move forward, to make better, to make whole. So the Red Guards, being Anuic men that came into Tamriel, it really works for me in this scope. The question then that I would dive into is, did they sail across the Sea of Azura? And, you know, west to east, across memory. I wrote something about this years ago. Going from west to east, so sailing eastwards across memory, is a pretty literarily important thing. You know, there's a lot to draw from that. So that is option one, is that the Red Guards sailed memory physically. The second option is that they escaped the destruction of their dream by running to the far shores, as their star signs taught them to. So essentially, we would have option two being they escaped the worlds of creation into basically a little snippet of the dream sleeve that they cut out for themselves and made a place that they can exist without changing. And that got transplanted into the next dream. Ready, set, go. Talk to me.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to jump in right after you there for obvious reasons. Some interesting thoughts, but I also want to sort of widen the scope a bit, because while you can definitely see some parallels in the Yokudan monomyth with, you know, Satak the serpent, everything is there, but then the world's called out. So that's something within him. Perhaps you want to say the worlds are his subconscious, calling out for things to change. But it had to come from within, and that was the hunger, Akel. But I feel like you do have the sort of cyclical violence, perhaps of acceptance and forgiveness to guilt and shame, however you want to idealize that, is you have Satak continually biting its own heart. It's a self-destructive cycle. The far shores, as I've come to understand them, are where spirits, Etada, Elnafe, old Yokudans before they were men, is when, like, the way it's worded is very interesting to me, because in the monomyth it's talking about how this practice of jumping between worlds became so easy that it became a place. called the Far Shore. So it's actually practice as place. It's not like a physical place so much. I think that can still tie in with your idea, Evan, about either being a corner of the dream sleeve. I also sort of view it as they've implanted themselves permanently within memory or some aspect of the Aurbis, which is why they've been able to do that. And the way I interpret that is because they said you have to walk at strange angles, which I've always interpreted to be the walking ways. So amaranth, enantiomorph, mantling, etc. These are all the different walking at strange angles, which then allow you to do the walkabout, which survives the self-destructive cycle of Satakal. So that allows you to, in essence, survive cataclysmic events, the death of dreams, the sinking of Yokuda, etc. And so that practice of doing the walkabout is itself the Far Shores. It's a way of permanently adding yourself to the dreamscape, kind of like how we've talked about this before with Vivek saying, yeah, Vivek was immortal, but Vivek the God has always been there. So saith the God kind of thing. That to me is also part of what the walkabout is for the Yokudans. And in that sense, I feel that you're right. It could be potentially either option of they escaped to the Far Shores or they sailed across memory, because it seems that Red Guards are capable, or more than capable, of both feats. And I personally think that it's not really a coincidence that the two main groups of Red Guards are called Warrior Wave, as in like a wave of memory washing up on your tide, and the Crowns, as in the ruling kings of that memory. I feel like there's a connection there somewhere.
So
I take it.
Yeah, I'm liking that, especially with the way that you described the Far Shores as a ideological method that they can basically propagate themselves, because that really works with the mythopoetic reality of the dream.
Yeah, I guess the way I try and word it is, the gods have a place in the sky, or like, a god has a place in the pantheon as the chief of the pantheon, but it doesn't mean it's like, yeah, they are physically there atop a ladder or atop a plant or anything. Like, it's a place not in a physical sense, but like a state of being.
Yeah. It's like a badge of office kind of.
Yeah.
I'm going to
are you trying to
say? Oh, sorry, Luther. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Cody.
All right. I'm gonna liken back to Tolkien once again, because we all know why I do this. Within the Tolkienverse, there is a thing known as the Halls of Mandos. Mandos is the god of death, and the elves are stuck in what's known as a great cycle. They can be, if the need is great, they can be brought back. There's a particular elf who does this, and Gandalf actually does this, who is brought back by Manwë, who is his chief Valar. And eventually there will be what is known as Dagor Daggerath, where it is the great battle where evil is finally beaten, and it happens again and again and again, which is likened back to, as we know, with Shor, Son of Shor, and all this going on. And I have personally come to interpret the Far Shores as the Red Guards version of the Halls of Mandos. They go there, that is where they're waiting, that is, when need is great, they can go to where they are needed and they fulfill their part.
I really like that. I think that that's how pretty much every afterlife that we've seen works. The Red Guards have their Far Shores. The Nords have Sovngarde, where they go to await the changing of Kalpas. Where they get ready to dine in hell, as it were, because the Nords are all world-eating fucking dragons. The dilemma it puts us in is, again, it's a 50-50 toss-up as to whether the Red Guards use the Far Shore to sail the Dream Sleeve, the Rivers of Time, or if they sailed the Waters of Memory.
Which is the Dream Sleeve. Ooh.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is those two are so intrinsically linked that one might as well be the other, because the dream sleeve is another version of water, because it is a river, which always does liken it to memory.
Actually, to add on what you said, and I think to try and provide some level of evidence for it, in Cyrus versus Vivek, there's a scene that I really, really love, how they sail back to Yokuda, and you have to do it in a very specific way. You have to sail west until Sep, the void in the sky, rises. And once you see him rise, then you have to make a beeline for it north, and then you arrive in Yokuda. Now, we know the Red Guards really love stars and their star maps and the constellations and whatnot, which I feel we all know at least one or two reasons why, but perhaps a part of that is also because it could be water as memory, but also waters of oblivion, which is why Sep rises. So when you see Sep rising, it's, oh, we're in the waters of oblivion. Now we have to actually change course and maintain our permanence in order to return to this memory across the void, which we use, or rather you need to use the stars for. I see Evan's like fanboying.
This is fucking awesome. I love this.
Yeah, so I was like, hey, wait a minute, thinking on it, I think that's how we join the two together. So there you go.
Especially since I'm getting kind of a heavy dose of Egyptian mythology lore playing Assassin's Creed Origins right now. This is vibing with me. Very cool, because it's like essentially sailing back to Yokuda is like sailing across the Duat, you know, back through the halls of death, and you have to follow the stars that guided you home. Otherwise, you're going to fall into the river. You're going to be taken. Osiris is going to devour you. Or not Osiris, sorry, the snake. I can't remember the serpent's name. But for Yokuda mythology, it's going to be that if you don't watch your shit, the World Eater is going to take you. And so that works going both into Tamriel and backwards to Yokuda, like when Cyrus and Vivek fought. So this is fucking cool.
Also, actually, to add to that, you just reminded me of something. Is in the monomyth, Sata called the World Skin, it also talks about how Tall Papa put the stars in the night sky in order to guide spirits better. That could also tie into the whole sailing aspect of, right, we kind of need to use that because otherwise we're lost here, and to be lost has a very different meaning in Tamriel or like the Aurbis than it does for us being lost at sea. So that also ties into it even more.
The reason this really clicks for me is the whole maritime nomad aspect of the Red Guards. And there was a point actually where I likened the sunken Yokuda to Lig, because of the maritime nomad mythos that goes with that. But we can get into that later. I'm just super excited right now and trying not to just like start sprinting around my apartment like a crazy person.
So everyone's gonna hate me for once again bringing up Tolkienverse, but it just kicked in with me. Within Arda, we have Valinor, which is where the Valar, where the gods are, and there was two trees, one with silver light and gold light, which Morgoth originally destroyed. Well, we have elves starting in Middle Earth that sail over, that are being guided by the gods to Valinor, and they come back. This could be the sense of the Red Guards, people that sailed to their gods and then came back. And then we have areas to the east that are unknown, where we only have two people that are known, the two blue wizards who went over the mountains of the east and who have never been heard from again. And this just clicked in my head. I was like, oh, well, there's another parallel within the Tolkien Legendarium and this.
So I've got some heresy here to run by you.
So do I.
All right.
So what if Tamriel itself is the far shores, and the walkabout itself is Trans-Amaranth travel. So to get to the far shores and escape the destruction of their dream, or the Kalpas within that dream, they have to travel to the next Amaranth. and then eventually they'll have to escape there and go to the next amaranth, and they just continue that. I mean, I totally dig what you guys have been saying, but I mean that little nugget's kind of lodged in there. Yeah.
See, yeah, no, I can totally see that within the parallels of the Okudens to the Red Guards, and then to me at least, the Sayasi came off very Red Guardish in the fact that the way they act, their structure, their maritime travel, and everything else. And we have the Kamal being Nordic, and the Kopatan being considered a weird corruption of the Kaj and all this other thing. So I personally believe the Sayasi are Jubal's remembrance of the Red Guards and so on and so forth.
Well, the Red Guards do have a lot of serpent-related imagery, and there is a technique or event. It's never really made clear canonically which one it is, called the 27 Serpent Folk Slaughter.
Yeah,
and there's no clear indication of whether that's the name of a technique or if they killed 27 serpent folk. It's never really made clear, to my knowledge. So, but we've seen with Satakal the Serpent, Sap's second serpent, there's a lot of imagery going on there. And so perhaps if Jubal had some awareness of that, then perhaps that's an implantation in Akavir, or maybe not. Akavir is definitely not my strong suit.
Well, not to mention there are a lot of, I mean, and I hate to make real world parallels, but I mean, there are a lot of Eastern Asian influences in Yokuden, architecture and culture, and there's a lot of that.
Yeah. Like Yokuden culture is basically feudal Japan in many ways.
But then we look at, say, the Akaviri armor in Elder Scrolls Online. That's samurai armor. So we see a lot of these same Japanese influences, both East and West. And so, I mean, I don't know. I think that lends some credence to what Cody said.
Are you telling me we're just jumping back and forth between Europe and Asia right now? Is that what's happening? We're just like, oh, Europe, Asia, Europe. Asia.
Well, as I would point out, is if you keep going west, eventually you're so west, you become the east.
Exactly. Glad you're picking up what I'm laying down.
I saw it. I take it. Yeah.
So then we have to wonder, like, what if? I mean, this from Amaranth to Amaranth to Amaranth, it almost sounds like it could be cyclical, which is a huge theme in TES again. So, I mean, wheels within wheels within wheels. We get a lot of that. So
we don't know what's beyond. We don't know what's beyond Akavir. We don't know if it's a circle.
Or what if once again after Akavir, if we get Yokuda again and it's all just process?
Well, that's what he's suggesting, but it could be that we go on to an even stranger dream from there.
An even stranger Yokuda. So maybe instead of a cycle, it's a spiral.
I mean, it's possible. It could just keep going down.
We're largely in the realm of conjecture at this point.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I'm going to throw something out here. So you've got a two-dimensional map, right? Not a globe, but a map of Tamriel. Or not of Tamriel, of Nirn. You've got Yokuda. You've got Tamriel. You've got Akavir. As you keep going east, in order to go west, you flip the map over.
The upside down Stranger Things.
Don't you leg me right now.
I'm going there. I'm fucking going there. So we've got Yokuda, Tamriel, Akavir, flip it on over, and we've got a reflection of Yokuda next. And then the reflection of Tamriel, which is lit after that. Fucking Andrew. So this is all completely fucking out there conjecture, stupidity. This isn't at all the way that I expect things to go, but I like it nonetheless.
Sorry, continue.
That was really it.
Oh, okay, all right. Because I seem to recall I think it was you, but it could have been someone else, like maybe Todd, but someone was talking about how Yokuda and Tamriel and Akavir are all the different parts of the dragon that is Akka, like the Akka tusk. That Akavir is, why Toshraka is so big and imposing is he's the dragon of the future, of possibility. So you can let your imagination sort of run wild with it. Tamriel is the dragon of the present. We sort of know that dragon, and Yokuda is the past. It's an incomplete dragon, a sort of weaker dragon. And then I think someone else, which may have been Todd or you, Evan, someone else in like this thread from a year or two ago came in and said, well, wait, no, they're all different parts of the dragon, or that there are three different aspects of the Akka oversoul, the past, present, and future. And the reason why Akavir is invaded in the past is because they want to actually become the whole, the Akka tusk, the everything. I think as someone was trying to argue, which is why we've seen attempts at invasion back and forth, because otherwise, the Yokuda that comes around again, in the leg shit you dropped there, Evan, then all of a sudden, Akavir is no longer the most powerful.
Cody. Okay.
I muted him.
And so, someone was talking about how that explains the invasions from Akavir to Tamriel, is because that to them is the past, and it's therefore supposedly a weaker target, which now that we've talked about all this other stuff, Evan, makes me think, well, maybe it wasn't so easy for them, because if Akavir is the dream where you reach heaven by love, they thought, oh, well, that'll be an easy enough invasion. And then they got to the place where people reach heaven by violence, and they're like, oh, hey, wait a minute, no, this isn't working out for us. But again, that's just pure conjecture based on not even stuff I've said, but stuff I've read about like at least 1 or 2 years ago.
I'm going to say right now, that was not me. I wish it had been, because I really like that. The really only thing that I do with the dragon, because people have done so much with it, is likening fucking Ariel to the head, Akatosh to the body, and Alduin to the tail. But it's also a dual-sided dragon because one eats itself, blah, 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 Ouroboros.
And then worms.
Oh, yeah, I did that a little bit.
Yeah. That was interesting. We'll
when you rip the wings off a dragon, when you rip its legs off, it becomes a worm.
Well, yeah, which is, hell, I remember bringing that up early on when I first joined this community, when we were talking about Kodo one time, just pointing out, well, no, like the worm mentioned is Akatosh, and that's why they made peace with the worm. They've made peace with the fact that time's basically fucked. And people were like, what? Nah, like it should be a dragon. Like, well, a dragon without wings was known as a worm in medieval times.
Take out the body, you get the head and the tail.
Yeah, so the way that I talked about this in that little heresy thread I threw out to, I think, one of our secret groups.
One of the many secret groups we have.
Yeah, the way that I looked at it was, you've got WYRM, worm, talking about a dragon, and worm, WORM, the way that Kirkbride wrote it in Coda. And it's a play on words, that when you break the dragon in such a way, it turns into a slithering beast. But I don't think it's Akatosh. I think it's Akka, the whole dragon, that becomes the worm. Because, oh God, I had a lot better going on in my head.
Wasn't there something somebody wrote that was like Vivek talking to the worm? At one point, I remember reading something. It was a conversation between Vivek and Akka or Akatosh, the worm.
Maybe something on Reddit. I'm not familiar with that.
I can't remember where I saw it. I'm gonna see if I can find it.
No idea.
So while Andrew does that, I would like to circle back to when we were talking about the wheel and it being a spiral. So when the spokes are removed from the wheel, it becomes a hurling disc, which could be a 2D form of a spiral with no depth to it. But you add depth, profile as we were talking about. It's not really anything to add on. It's just a weird thought I'd like to swap out.
I mean, do we want to talk about the shape of the Aurbis now and the wheel and all that?
I feel like that would be the perfect segue.
Yeah, because someone, I don't remember who, maybe it was Adam Fields or Adrian, they posted a map of the Aurbis, which was kind of as like a chick. There's in the Dream Sleeve, and then Mundus Within, and the Adric Plains or planets and all that. But in the top right-hand corner, they showed the Circle of Anu, the Circle of Padme, and between that was a sort of like eye-shaped space that had a circle within that. And I hate that that was just a little corner thing. I feel that that should be more important. Evan, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we're talking about the eye. So basically take a fucking Venn diagram, Anu Padme, that little crescent circle in the middle. Like Felix said, it's an eye-shaped thing. And that's important because the Aurbis, not the gray maybe, but what it creates is the Godhead's way of viewing itself. Yeah,
here, I have it on the screen.
And that circle in the middle is the iris. The iris and the pupil, everything. It's the functioning optic portions of the eye that's not just meat. Like I said, this is how the Godhead gains introspection. This is how it views its dream. So you've got the gray maybe that creates basically a little window for the Godhead to view its internal struggle.
I can roll with that.
So the shape of the Aurbis, like we've been talking about, is that circle there. Inside it is all the worlds of creation, which is the mundus. So the Aurbis is the crescent around it, which contains a lot more, like void, while you've got the mundus, which is the circle inside, which is the wheel.
And Aetherius. Yeah, Aetherius in there. Center.
Yeah.
The Aurbis.
So the wheel is, I think we'll start talking about this. The wheel is the mundus. Most importantly, Nirn is its center. So visualize in your head a wheel. You've got the outside, that's the rim. And out of that is Aetherius and void. And there's basically a thin ribbon of void is the way that I like to look at it before Aetherius. And Sithis comes in at this point as void. So Anuiel I liken to Aetherius. And that's probably way out there. And a lot of you are like, what the fuck? But I'm going to go with it just for this little bit. So you've got the rim of the wheel, and then at the center, you've got the hub, a smaller circle within that, which is Nirn. So in my eye analogy, you've got the eye, which is Aurbis, and then you create the mundus with the iris, and then Nirn is the pupil. With the wheel, it's the hub, and coming out of it are spokes. These are the Aedra, and the spaces between the spokes are Daedra. Because it's a three-dimensional wheel, that's why we get 8 or 9 versus 16 or 17. It's hard to conceptualize that way physically, but it works when we're talking the meta aspect. Further thoughts? I'm sure a lot of you were itching to scream at me about some things I just said.
Yeah, you didn't mention subgradients at all, which are like basically the way that like the universe layers itself in realities. So sure, there's an eye, but that eye is like Aetherius, and it's got like, God, I wish freaking Deadite was here right now. He's so good at explaining how subgradients work.
Well,
we can just construct down with subgradients.
Yeah, it's just a lower level of reality, I suppose. What were you gonna say, Andrew?
Well, I was as far as subgradients go. I mean, think of it like a color wheel or something. You've got a shade of solid color. Let's say red, just because I picked that out of my ass. And then we got a slightly different shade of red. It's a little more muted, but just barely. And then it continues until we have all these different shades of red, down from pink and mauve and white, and then sometimes those can incorporate other colors. So we've got blues and greens, and so we end up with all this interplay of other colors until we get down to the most mundane mortal Fargoth, like just everything is kind of structured that way. So
I suppose in a way it's what is it? It's dividing the pureness of reality down to actual reality.
Yeah. So I suppose if you wanted to go way out there, like Anu and Padme would be white and black respectively. Like that's because those are pure, unadulterated colors. The colors tints, I guess, is the proper word for that.
I've always seen it as the Plato's theory of forms. Does anyone know about that?
You're talking about like the elements?
No. Or Plotinus. Plotinus took his idea and kind of made it different. But Plato devised this idea of we've got the material reality, which is matter. And then above that reality is I think it was the soul. And the soul can move between the material and the nous, which is the higher reality. And the nous is like the realm of perfect forms, perfect ideas, perfect things. Like everything is perfect in the nous, but when it comes down to the material reality, it becomes imperfect. It's like thinking of a perfect shape in your mind and then trying to draw that shape, it becomes an imperfect shape because now it's a material, it's sure. In the material reality. So it's this thing that you can almost the way I always viewed it was when Vivek achieved Chim, he was able to actually take his nous, his perfect self, from the higher reality, which would be Aetherius, and actually become it in material. So that was his nous, was his perfect version of himself that he became, and when he achieved Chim. Obviously, the soul would be oblivion. The nous would be Aetherius, and they actually, like, if you read the Magna Gi Pantheon, they talk about things that are these perfect ideas. Where this, I don't remember who it was Dabella or something like that. She tried to take carnivores, the idea of carnivores and the idea of vegetarians, and combine them into one.
It was Meridnunda.
Oh, was it Meridnunda?
Who wears the black block under her hood? Yeah,
maybe.
What we were talking about specifically right here was it was Daubella, D-A-U.
Was it Daubella? Yeah.
She's a proto-myth echo of Dabella. So
supposedly, yes. But anyway, yeah. So she just took those ideas, which are and she combined them into one idea. That's the nous right there, is these perfect ideas. And then you have, of course, the Godhead, or the good, as Plato called it. And the good is the divine creator, the God, the whatever. So it's everything. So it's kind of like that's subgradients, in my opinion, how they work. You could also look up the Kabbalah idea of Tzimtzum, which is the idea that God pulled away from to create our lower reality in the mythology of, help me out, the Hebrew mythology. Yeah.
Pulling back real quick, Andrew just corrected me with the
it was Wodrub.
Correct quote. It was actually Merid. No, he was right. It was Meridnunda. This is flavor text for Wodrub. But Meridnunda is the one that tried to take newish ideas of carnivorous and herbivorous and smash them together into something weird.
Okay, I couldn't remember who it was.
Called omnivores, dude.
Well, I mean, but yeah, they that was like, and also like in the Magna Pantheon, they talk about like light and color all the time, and different spectrums of light. But that's just
magnetic spectrum, basically.
Well, let's. I mean, now that we're talking about the Magna Pantheon, I mean, it's worth noting that there's the C signs, the blend signs. There's CMY and K. Those
and
are
blend.
well, yeah, and blend. CMYK is a printing mode. That's so when you are doing graphic design and you have to prepare it. Yeah, there you go, right there. And you have to prepare it for printing. You have to make sure your colors are in CMYK because that's how most printers operate instead of an RGB color system, which is what your screen uses. It's light versus pigment is what it is, and so this is pigmentation. C being cyan, Y being yellow, M being magenta, and K being black for whatever fucking reason.
Because it ends with the K.
I guess.
Well, they have to differentiate that because otherwise you'd have black, blue, and brown.
Sure, but see, there is no blue in CMYK. Blue is just a combination of magenta and cyan in different measures. So I mean, right. I don't know why. I worked in a print shop for like 7 years, so I kind of know my shit with this. But I mean, yeah, that's the printers I would work with use toner in these colors, and that's how you get crisp images on paper. And so, I mean, you got to go through and calibrate your monitor so that the RGB properly demonstrates what the CMYK is going to look like, which can get kind of dicey sometimes if you're really caring about color, which a lot of fucking people do.
Real quick, before we dive into the Magna Gi Pantheon, since that's kind of a diversion from what we were talking about, I'm going to back up to subgradients, do a little bit of a rewind. Because the way that I like to deal with them is actually using in-universe names and kind of explaining them downwards a little bit. So I'm going to do a little bit of onion theory here. Layers, ogres, all that good shit. So the
Aurbis comes in layers.
the place that we're going to start is with the Godhead, and we already talked about that a good bit, which is nice because I can just skip straight down into his warring psyche, which is Anu and Padme, which is the next subgradient down. So Anu and Padme create the Gray Maybe, but the interplay, it's a little bit too tumultuous. It's a little bit too destructive, self-destructive. And so you had to create a way for Anu and Padme to communicate. And this is where Sithis and Anuiel come into play. And in order for physical reality, in a way that the mortal mind can grasp it, to exist, is time and space. So you've got Anuiel, time, and Sithis, space. I like to call Sithis the space between Anu and Padme, in which time can exist. So, Godhead, Anu Padme, Anuiel Sithis. And then from there, what's up?
Oh, just to note, they when they interplay, that's and go to the lower subgradient of Aetherius, that is when Anu and Padme, or that's when Anu and Padme become Anuiel and Sithis. At least that's the way it is to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything becomes the center and then expands back out into these larger ideas. So from Anuiel and Sithis, time and space, we then have the agents of time and space. So Akka, the dragon, sometimes it's called Oriel, sometimes it's called Akatosh, sometimes it's called Alduin. All times it is going to stem back up the three tusks of Akka to time, Akka, the agent of Anuiel. On the other side of that, on space, we've got Lorcan, which is the agent of space and change. So Godhead, Anu Padme, Anuiel Sithis, and then their agents that made creation happen, Akka and Lorcan. So these are now, we're getting into the Et Ada, which are the divine spirits that floated through the dream in endless fields of color, devoid of mortal trappings, until Lorcan made his grand scheme happen based on the plans that he stole from Magnus. And then we have the Mundus at the center. And this is the mortal realm. At this point in the creation myth, we have the dawn. So everything is still a little bit up in the air. Everything is still very much so a living legend. It's all larger than life. It's very hard to comprehend, which is why we have the possibility of existence for Aldmeris, which is the elven memory of perfection, unifying agents that keep the star signs together in their non-existent home. But the Mundus made things stabilized by the creation of Adamantia, the towers, the first tower. And then others sprang up from there to further stabilize reality and make things not ethereal, but physical. So Mundus was created, and everything, all of the Ada that were floating around out there, came together. And the Adra that sacrificed themselves became physical planets. You know, we've got Stendar, Arche, Mara, Debella, all that stuff, and Mundus in the center of this rotating orrery that is all the physical realm through which the Godhead can actually see himself, can understand, make sense of the dream that he's having. So the lowest subgradient is the mortal realm. Further thoughts?
I would just like to point in that the lowest subgradient. So.
Can't understand you past the dick in your mouth, Cody.
I would like to just point out that the actual lowest subgradient would be Amaranth, where you're so low you become something else.
The lowest subgradient was Mortal Death, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with that because I think that Amaranth is jumping out of the mortal coil.
Out of the subgradient structure. It jumps out of the structure.
The highest subgradient, the Godhead, that is Amaranth.
In Cody's defense,
let me explain this better. I got this. I'm a big boy. But likening back to sailing so east, you become west, and so far, you go so low that you become high.
Just like you're suicidal, so you smoke weed instead.
Shut up.
Anyway.
God, I was going the same way in my mind, except worse, way worse.
Well, I mean, going back to that color wheel subgradient thing I was talking about. So we take a solid color like red, right? And we already said that white and black are like the highest possible you can get, right? And then like the static of the gray is in there, and then you get the colors, and then those colors, as they fade, they turn into white, and or black or something like that. So it's again cyclical, and big theme. So I mean, I would say that because an amaranth can come off of another amaranth, it's just this never-ending regress of big to small becomes big to small, and it just kind of keeps going that way. So I mean, I more or less agree with what Cody's saying.
Goes along with the idea of them being downward cascading fractals.
This is, I guess, where we get the kaleidoscope talk about cascading colors through each other, zooming in until it's so far zoomed in that it's actually zoomed out again.
I would actually liken it more to micro to macro or macro to micro, however you want to look at it. Because if you think of it like, oh yeah, you zoom in close enough into the human body, it looks like a star map of the universe and whatever else.
It looks completely different. Yeah. Actually looks entirely alien in a lot of ways. But
that's one way to say you don't like your body. Show some self-love, Luther. Come on. There you go. Attaboy.
So, crap, I forgot what we were talking about now.
Subgradients.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Cody thinks it's a shelled, amaranths are shelled, and you go so low that you become a new amaranth. And other people think that you break through the structure and become a new amaranth and create your own structure, which is fine in both ways. Although if it is a fractal pattern, fractal patterns don't reset ever, do they? I've never seen one reset.
It's not so much that fractals reset, but that they're repeating in nature.
Well, they reiterate on themselves so much that that eventually they become something new and more complex than they were before.
Okay, yeah, I will rescind what I said then, because especially when we talk about the scarab that becomes the new man, we take the lowest form of life, a scavenger, just a little insect, but it becomes something greater.
Well, by that logic, all the insects would become amaranth before any of the mortals would.
No. Okay, it's because the scarab is the scarab because of Egyptian mythology and why it's important, and it's important because it's a symbol.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why. Otherwise, yeah, it's like, oh, it's a scarab. I'm just gonna crush that with my foot. But it's because it became a symbol did it become important. Kind of like how the Prolix Tower is. I'm going to say that this is a thing until it's a thing. And then eventually the universe or existence is like, okay, yeah, fine, that's a thing. It's kind of like this scarab beetle, this little insignificant insect, actually super important. And then eventually enough people said, yeah, you know what, you're right. That's a super important thing that literally rolls shit around.
Well, question, what was the scarab?
I get 2 thumbs up from Evan. Evan Senpai noticed me, so we're good.
What was the scarab in Egyptian mythology? What did it mean?
I think it represents eternal life, if I'm not mistaken.
It was the moving of the sun and the march of time and rebirth.
Oh yeah, because
they once thought scarabs reproduced asexually.
No, yeah, according to Wikipedia, the scarab is seen as a symbol of the heavenly cycle and the idea of rebirth and regeneration.
There we go. All right, that makes a lot of sense. Because you're being reborn as the god.
Yeah. So like the common imagery is a scarab. He's got a sun disk over his head, and then wings coming out. Yep. And so I mean that relates to the cycle of the sun, which can also be seen to mean rebirth and regeneration. And
the dung heap that is the sun across the sky.
Kind of.
The sun is a big ball of shit.
It kind of is. But
no, because it's because Egyptians
Red Guard for actually having a part of the game where you're Cyrus and you have to jump around this giant scarab, and as you jump around, it activates different levers and pulleys, and the scarab transforms into a man. So we at least know that, like, the Red Guards have an understanding of that.
Okay, yeah. But not relate to the lore. That is the worst segment of any game I've ever played because fuck that jumping bullshit. I've done that. I've been there. It's awful. Don't do it.
Oh, hey, dude, Morrowind still for me remains like a treasure, but the combat system, I still occasionally get really angry about that.
See,
I get it, man. You're allowed to be mad at the games.
On my ex's laptop, I got an emulator for all of the games. I bought Morrowind and then got Arena and Daggerfall because they're free, but then got emulators for all the games past. So I was actually playing Shadowkey, a mobile game, on a laptop, which was really, really clunky. but it was cool. But yeah, no, fuck Redguard and everything about it.
That's not the way to get Kirkbride Senpai's attention.
I don't want his attention. I had it, and then he unfriended me because of my shit posting.
That makes sense.
Same.
I never shit posted. He just unfriended me. Any but.
See, you can't be unfriended by Michael Kirkbride if you're not friends with Michael Kirkbride.
Yeah, I sent him a request and he denied it one time. So
Whatever.
I only cried for like 3 hours.
Whatever.
3 hours, very nice. Yeah, I feel like now we're actually sort of starting to get off topic. So what do we move on to next in the Magna Gay thing?
Yeah, I think we're
going
to
talk about before we went back to some gradients.
Yeah, I think we should go ahead, get back to the Magna Gay Pantheon, which I'm gonna fucking pull up so that I can do my thing. And I'm also gonna try and look for some messages I have from one of our esteemed members, Kenny, because he has sent me some just out of this fucking world stuff about the Magna Gay Pantheon.
Well, I remember reading that one thing about the Magna Gay Pantheon that I don't agree with, so I'm trying to remember what it was. The Magna Gay are just different, or the Magna Gay Pantheon is like apparently written by Lig to implant an idea virus into Tamriel so that they can invade it, so that they can bleed through. It was really weird. Okay. Fucking Kenny, what's his actual name?
Kenny McCulloch.
Yeah.
That one.
It works on a few levels because the Magna Gay Pantheon is described by its author as a Tindalos demon trap.
Wait. Oh, it's not in the writing, the text here. Where did you find that? And what's a Tindalos demon trap?
So this is some the Hounds of Tindalos.
Tindalos.
So
I know
these
what you're talking about now.
These are extra dimensional beings that lay right-angled traps to catch their prey and basically devour its ideology on a complete level.
Wait, it devours ideology?
That's the basic version. You can look up on Wikipedia Hounds of Tindalos. As for where I'm getting that, I don't remember if that's in the raw text on TIL or if Kirkbride commented that somewhere, but it was basically a be careful when you're reading this because real world magic applies. It's a very occult thing that circles back to his inspiration from Crowley.
Yeah, Tindalos is Cthulhu Mythos stuff.
Yeah,
Hound of Tindalos.
It's Lovecraftian.
Yeah, I know that they moved at right angles, so they basically lived in the ethereal, or not the ethereal, the ethereal realm, basically, if you're thinking in D&D terms. And they would come in, and I thought they just ate you. I didn't think that they sucked out your ideas or anything like that.
Well, it's another high-end mythopoetic thing where it's like the eat it to become it deal. The Hounds of Tindalos, yes, they do eat you, but it's like they devour every single piece of essence that made you real.
Oh, so they remove you from time and space.
Yes.
Okay, I see. It says.
So are they basically the Ligian version of the Jills?
No. The Jills exist in Lig because time is shattered, and the Jills are actually waging war on it.
Okay.
Evan, weren't you the one saying that Tamriel, Nirn, the Aurbis Mundus, and everything is a world of song, whereas Lig is governed more by like a world of color.
Yes, this comes straight out of the Meridia-Kind dichotomy. So in, Tamriel, the one that we're familiar with and we can talk about with somewhat more grounded words, Meridia is color and Kind is sound. And these are two things that, kind of interact against each other and help you see and hear and perceptualize everything on a physical level. So the Aurbis is a song within the dream, right? Lig is basically the painting, if you will, and Meridia is not Meridia, Meridnunda, the Magna-Gi who wore the hood that contained all of the black block. And this is important when we were talking about the CMYK, right? So Meridia has the whole of the black block within her hood, right?
Whatever the black block is.
She is...
It's the ink cartridge, dude.
Basically,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's that side
Wow.
of the color palette that allows for disambiguation between colors. Because without black in that color spectrum, we can't differentiate. Everything would just be a blur, right?
All right.
So Meridia in Aurbis is color. In Lig, she is the ability to differentiate, make clear, and basically we have this dichotomy that is one side that we see is the one that created sound, and this links back to Kirkbride's IRC ramble about the Knights of the Nine, the Meridia and Kind split, and when we flip the map over, instead of one, we have the other. So yeah, Meridnunda is the chief of the pantheon that makes creation possible, kind of deal.
Okay, so let's get into a few themes that show up in the Magna-Gi pantheon. You got the black block, which you already described as basically the thing that differentiates color, as I understand. And then you have the nanonull, and you have the Chrome device. Is it all just printer analogies or some shit?
So
that would annoy the piss out of me.
I actually have a little bit sitting right in front of me, a little chat between me and Kenny. Nanonull is basically the Tiber/Talos walker of Lig, right? And his Chrome device is like Numidium, right? So instead of brass, we have Chrome. So the way that I describe it is Nanonull and the Chrome device are the reasons that Lig fell. In Tamriel, basically the only reason that Numidium came back and was able to just fuck up the dream in its entirety, like we see in Coda, was because Tiber reactivated it, yeah?
Yep.
Same deal with Lig. Nanonull built his Chrome device, and this is eons ago. Lig has already experienced its fall. All of the lore that we are getting from Lig, that's post-destruction of the original dream.
I don't know if
Lig is the original dream?
No. So, okay. We're getting a little bit funky-dealy here, so we have to kind of zoom out a bit. So we got Anu, right? Aldanu. He has his dream, okay? He killed Nur, his lover. But we talked about earlier death being the lowest subgradient that creates a higher one, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Nur also had a dream. And it is going to be the exact opposite focus of Aldanu's because they're on opposing sides, right? In this conflict of self-interests. So when we flip the map over, we've got Aldanu on the side that we've seen, Nur on the back of the side that we have not seen. So Nur, as per fucking Michael Zeigler's Mother of All write-up, and I had my qualms with it at first, but the more that I kind of worked it through, it really settled in well that Nur is the mother of all for Lig, so the dreamer.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so the way that we have seen Lig sometimes talked about is the 19 and 9 and 9 oceans. Yeah?
Which I've never understood.
Okay, so the easiest way that I can break this one down is you've got the planet at the center of Nur's dream. I call it Nurni. And yes, that does sound a lot like the Khajiit thing, but it is somewhat different, or maybe not. You know, Michael and I have talked about that pretty extensively when we were doing the Landfall Day Zir stuff. And it doesn't matter a whole lot right now, but we have this ball of planet that is all water. There are no land masses on it, and it is ruled by the Dreg. Following so far?
Yeah, although I do not pronounce them that way, but details.
Yeah, everybody's got a different way, and my pronunciation is probably horribly off.
And it might not even be a sphere.
Maybe, maybe not. No idea, right?
I do think it is a sphere. I definitely do.
I don't know. I think Nirn is a flat continent, and so is Lig and everything else. It makes sense to me.
Well, Lig isn't the planet. It's a continent, right? Like Tamriel.
Yeah.
So Tamriel's the continent, Lig is the continent, and they exist on a planet.
Or the plane, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
Plane, it doesn't really matter. Nothing's ever been specified about that, so we don't know.
Nothing is certain. Everything is permitted.
Yes. So you've got this ball of water that is ruled by the Dreg, and it's split into the 19 and 9 and 9 kingdoms, all of which belong to the Ready Man, our dude Molag Bal. So the Ready Man has control over everything as sort of this
King of the Tro.
Evil overlord, right?
At this time, he wasn't immortal. At least I don't think he was.
He was and wasn't. It's kind of one of those like mythic hero levels of immortality.
Yeah, or walking way things or
where
something.
He is so strong that he might as well be unkillable, and time doesn't really take him down.
Yep.
But he was basically ruling over these slave cattle that were the non-aquatic, the maritime nomads, is what I call them. So basically you've got, all the races that would eventually populate Lig. They're sailing these oceans, and when they're caught, they're enslaved by the Lig, or by the Dreg. Eventually, though, land rose up, and this is where City Face and Dagon and the God's Body are all very, very important, right? So the God's Body is what the denizens of Lig call the continent that they live on. And this is because, just like Ifre, the Earth Bones in Tamriel, created a structure. Someone or something created a structure that would become Lig, the God's Body. And it eventually became revered as City Face.
Oh.
Yeah. So
that's how City Face fits in.
I don't know whether to call it Hanot. I don't know to call it City Face.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm going to go...
I think it was Hanot, and then it became City Face when it got to Lig.
The way that I like, or would like, I think, to end up solidifying this is Hanot was the predecessor. right? And that is the one that became the god's body. City Face is what he was turned into by the Grabbers, which I'm still trying to work through. It's all weird shit, you know. Fucking Franzen's been helping me.
Well, okay,
bit.
so
we haven't really touched the world building of Lig for almost a year now since LFDZ came out. So I'm digging deep here.
So did Hanot become City Face, become Mayrunes, the Razor?
No.
And then Dagon took up the Razor? Because that's all what I always thought what happened. Because Dagon is described in the Al Dudaga as well, the Leaper Demon King. His origins are different than Hanot's.
I'm getting to that.
Okay. So, God damn it. This is going to be long.
Yeah. The continent of Lig rose up from the oceans, and the maritime nomads no longer had to fear the Dreg. And I think the event that was able to turn the the out there spirit of Hanot into a landmass, like a Frey becoming the structure of Tamriel, was the fall of Lig, when Merid Nunda was defeated eventually by all of the warring spirits that are now revered in the Magna V Pantheon. And so now the maritime nomads no longer had to flee the Dreg. They moved in and were able to settle Lig. Enter City Face, which is what I like to think of as kind of like the capital city, as a like imperial city derivative, Jaff. And we've got Franzen's short comic, Jaff, the Arena of Lig. And it is called the Arena because, you know, Aldanu and Nirni are they're warring spirits. They are very violent in their nature. So the dream of Lig is just as violent as Tamriel. And so Jaff, the Arena of Lig, arises as sort of a derivative of the Imperial City with a, you know, Proto-Zero Tower kind of deal at its center, which is its arena.
Okay, so City Face becomes the continent. Is that right?
Hanot becomes the continent. City Face becomes its civilization.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And that's why they describe the continent of Lig as sometimes having a face.
Yes.
Okay. That's bizarre.
We have a question. We have a question off to the side. Neck and Jonah asked, what or who's the light source for the Ligian colors to be recognized? Magnus as well.
Yes. And we see this in, I don't remember which fight it is, but in the 7 fights of the Al Dudaga, when, you know, the Leaper Demon King is trying to get away from the changing of world skins, he jumps through the universe. And a lot of people like to liken this to Magnus, right? And that's where we get the whole Mehrunes Dagon is Leaper Demon King, is Magnus, blah, blah, blah. The Leaper Demon King punched through to Lig.
Oh, he jumps to Lig, okay.
And that is where we get Dagon, who would eventually take up the razor, the changing implement, to shave away at the land masses, to create hills and valleys and cities, to give the people of Lig something to live upon. They're no longer sailing the endless oceans, they're settling the land that they'd never had before.
I know the Razor's revolution, and Dagon was originally destruction.
Yes.
And so their spheres combined into one.
Yep, which is where we get Numantia.
Numantia, yeah.
The principle of violent change.
Freedom.
That is a rallying cry and the ideology that made life on the continent of Lig possible.
So, what's the origin of the razor other than the Gi made it? Because
Still
apparently
working on it.
the Gi made the razor, but we don't know how.
Wait, hang on. I may have an idea, but first I need an answer to a question.
Okay.
What does the razor do again exactly? Because you mentioned it could cut away at like cities and stuff, but I thought it was to cut away at, say, aspects of divinity, which is why you can have Mehrunes Dagon is not necessarily Mehrunes the razor.
So
it cuts
Mehrunes
anything.
Dagon, as seen in the other dream, is only possible when you combine Mehrunes the razor and Dagon. So we're going to get into subgradients again. I'm still fleshing out like the upper divisions. You know, I've got Nirni as the dreamer, and Nirni at its center. So I've got the very furthest outside, and I've got the very lowest inside. From there, you know, the Et Ada, Magna Gi. That is the way that I conceptualize all of that for kind of like the middle subgradient. Basically, though, Lorcan, that version is Dagon.
Okay, then here's some heresy for you. I've speculated before that maybe the Magna Gi and the Yokonins, or the spirits that would become the Yokonins, are basically one and the same. So if the razor can basically cut away at stuff, and for lack of better terms, is a magical sharp implement, who's the only other group we know that applies magic through sharp pointy things?
I'm assuming you're talking about sword singing here, yeah?
Yeah.
Sword singing Yokonins, because we've seen that it's capable of doing some pretty spectacularly awesome shit. And so perhaps the razor is a form of Shahai or a magical artifact that allows that change to happen. Food for thought and total fucking heresy. Not even putting my stamp of approval on that, just like an idea you gave me based on the past 5 minutes.
Interesting. That'd be more powerful than the Pancratos sword, though.
Yes and no. I mean,
yeah, I was about to say, I think that the Pancratos sword is kind of like the furthest logical conclusion of using this magical implement. You know, it's like we're going to change things so much that it's just not there anymore.
Because you can cut literally anything you want to with it. You can cut a name. You can cut a. Yep. You can cut a space and time. You can cut whatever you want.
Atmos.
I mean, the Pancratos cord can cut the smallest single thing, but it can't cut literally anything. It can just cut the smallest single thing.
Well, like, okay, there's 2 ways to view it, both of which are awesome, which is if it cuts the smallest thing, which as we know it in the real world is the building block of life, so the atomos.
The atom.
You're talking, yeah, like the atom, you're talking like nuclear sword, which is fucking badass. But if you're also talking Elder Scrolls verse, which is it cuts the uncuttable. The uncuttable to that would be something like the laws of nature or the laws of time. Red guards don't play by that rule. So in that sense, it kind of opens up more possibilities, but both possibilities are awesome.
I suppose that's true. It cuts the uncuttable.
So if it's the laws of nature, does that mean the Atomos is the Earthbones?
In a manner of speaking, maybe.
Or it's the code that the Earthbones put into the universe to make it like that.
I kind of offered my thoughts on that in Aria, and I don't have it in front of me to bring up the relevant section. Let me see if I can try and find that, though. Hang on. This suddenly became relevant to our discussion. Give me a second. I got to find it. Y'all just chat and have fun.
But so crap.
I said, speak, Daniel. I'm looking for it.
I'm trying to think of what we were talking about.
So, well, we were half talking about subgradients and also more about the Magna Gi and how it related to Lig and the Razor.
Oh yeah, okay. So I have a question here. Lig is just the coffee stain of Tamriel. It's Tamriel upside down. So how are they getting into Lig and they're not showing up in Tamriel? Why do they have power in Lig and not in Tamriel? Why don't the Aedra or some sort of analog of the Aedra have power in Lig? I guess Lig is technically was nothing at first. Is that
this
safe to
goes
say?
back to that color versus sound conversation we were having earlier. You know, in the frame of color, what the fuck is sound? Does it matter? If you're Michael Kirkbride and have synesthesia, yes. So they
That's
can
probably
relate
why he linked those
perfectly.
two.
Wait, real shit. Does he actually have synesthesia?
Yeah, he can see sound.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I just need to make sure if he actually had it.
Yeah, lucky bastard.
Yeah, he likens certain sounds to certain colors, is my understanding.
So
that's
why all of his
Certain
writing
colors and also certain shapes. Like he said that all
Yeah, they're
classical
like auras.
looks the same. Not that it sounds the same, but that it all looks the same.
that explains why all of his writing is like on PCP or something.
Yeah, because he can link two different concepts.
And I found the little excerpt from Area that I was thinking of about the Atomos and the Uncuttable. So the main character, Aina, is in the memory stone of Banohan and Masaishi, an ancient Yokudan heretic. And he's basically also more or less trying to explain Chim, Kim, however you want to pronounce this, to her, which is why he invokes the Yokudan god of Talk to Death. Because if you don't get this right, that's it, no more you, and you never were. So here we go. Right, so stone can become sand thanks to water and air. Memory leaves an imprint, and so it can never be truly gone. Sand may be made of stone, but stone is not sand. What governs those rules? Is it due to Irfan, who became the man of the stone forest? No, he simply told us about the rules. He was the first prophet of Imarhan, the first prophet of memory. He gave himself up in breath of royalty to become a permanent stone of memory, what we know as the laws of nature. Look to his atomos, meditate on it, yada, yada, yada. The atomos is the uncuttable. What is the uncuttable? A natural law? No. Remember, the sharper the mind, the sharper the blade. The uncuttable is a point, not a line or a dot, but a point. The uncuttable is a point in all meanings of the word, a physical as well as temporal manifestation. Many of us, since we have forgotten, see time as a line. While this is not quite wrong, it's not quite right either. When the various points known as the atomos come together, what binds them? How does one bind a wheel to its hub? Spokes. Easy. The wheel is a metaphor for the atomos. Meditate further. Strings of a sort bind the atomos and govern how it may dance. Look into the atomos. What do you see? A hub and a wheel. It is two-dimensional. Or is it? If it were, turn it on its side. What do you see? I would see the letter I. Now, connect them to each other, he ordered. I and I. Heh. I and I would be we if I thought about it a certain way. Hey, wait a minute. These are the laws of memory as enshrined and passed down through all avenues of existence. See also the math of spheres and towers in the atomos. A sphere, empty, I am not. 0, a tower, full, I am. 1. See the math of memory, which enshrines the ones and zeros as the math of spheres and towers. Look again to the atomos that makes up all things in the song of existence. Pluck the strings between them and they shall move for you. Wait, the atomos has and needs a stone. It needs that to join with other atomos. A tower from a sphere and a sphere from a tower. They are both I am and am not. Pluck the strings, play a song. It's music. Everything is music. The earth bones, arc the bones that otherwise cannot bend. I understand now. What do you see? Banu asked once more. I awoke and knew my eyes were like stars in the night sky. The wheel.
Divinity, yay.
Basically. But like the Atoma sort of leads to all of that if you can see the connection and the understanding within there, but that it's a point in both space and time, which is why if you cut the uncuttable, everything gets super fucked up. Does it wake the Godhead? I still haven't even figured that out yet, but it's a cool idea. So there's that.
So why did they destroy their dream with using cutting the smallest unit, or the uncuttable, and yet Mehrunes can cut whatever or not even Mehrunes, but Mankar Cameron could cut whatever the fuck you wanted with it.
Well, that's actually
if they're the same thing.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is there's actually competing theories, and this isn't just my own thing, but there are competing theories about who or what sank Yokuda. Two main stories. One basically says that it was a Shahai that sank Yokuda. Several other accounts mention stone magic, which, as I've inferred before, could also be memory magic. The one involving the Pancrado sword, you could, if you look really hard between the lines, see it as a personal story of vengeance from the last emperor of Yokuda, Emperor Hira, because the Yokudans who used said stone magic or Pancrado sword were called the Hira dirge, and a dirge is like a funeral lament. It's meant to be sung, rather appropriately, at a funeral. So when something or someone is dying or dead. And so there is an idea you could extract from some of these stories that the Hira dirge and the sinking of Yokuda was Emperor Hira's final act of vengeance or defiance upon the Ansei and any of the Yokudans who stood against him, because there's that massive, ridiculous civil war at the very end.
Okay, so
there isn't really a lot of information either way, and that's something I'm still trying to figure out and see if it works. And I keep going at it time after time again, and I'm still not close to an actual answer. I'm just giving you guys the two main versions that exist so far. One being the one with the Hira dirge, and the other being it was stone magic, aka memory magic, that sunk Yokuda, because that's kind of where memory is in the ocean. So it could also be a metaphor. There's several avenues to this. Put some light in here. So that's really all I have to say on that subject.
Brewery.
Okay, so it was asked earlier by Luther why Mankar only cut so much if it could cut anything. This is all about perspective and goals. What was Mankar trying to change? And he had a very specific thing in mind that he wanted to do. And the problem is he didn't have the greater understanding of reality and all its falsehoods. He didn't have Chim. He didn't see the wheel on its end. He saw quite a bit, but not the fullest picture that he would have needed to alter the very fabric of the universe in order to kind of bypass a lot of the things that ended up happening that we see in Oblivion and the commentaries, right? So the reason that he didn't just cut away at reality is because he was shaving away at his Nimic to change himself, because that is all that he understood. So he shaved away pieces of himself in order to wear the Chimel Adabal, to wear the Amulet of Kings, so that he could kind of usurp the Dragonborn throne and let Mehrunes Dagon, something that he had misinterpreted, do all of the work for him.
Okay. All right. I'm rolling that around in my head.
Wow.
And then more from the chat, Nick and Jonah was asking about the fall of Yokuda, and he's wondering if the fall of Orkalk Tower could also be likened as kind of a method of the fall. And my response there is the falling of the towers is sort of pieces to the greater arc that is the fall of man greater story arc in Elder Scrolls, right? So we're following in Tamriel each one of the towers collapsing.
Right.
Same deal in Yokuda. You know, these are all mechanics that lead to a certain outcome, but they're not necessarily the cause of it. There's greater things at work that cause the towers to fall. So you've got to zoom out the perspective a little bit.
Hey, sorry. I have to actually disappear for like a handful of minutes and do some chores and run some stuff out to the garage. So instead of just going back and forth, I'm just going to leave and come back.
Cool.
But I should be back in maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, not even. So
sounds good.
I'll be back. Till then, peace, everybody.
See ya. Gonna just throw out some feelers real quick, see how we're feeling about the fall of Yokuda and all the Lig stuff we've talked about. We have a lot of blank screens on right now, so feedback in the chats maybe. What are we feeling like going into? Do we want to keep going on the ramblings that we're currently on, or do we want to head into maybe the Kalpic cycle and the nature of Chim? Bueller. Okay, I say fuck it. Let's go ahead, start talking about the Kalpic cycle. Oh, wait, never mind. We're going to talk about Chim. Just kidding. Okay. So, yeah, Nekin wanted to ask about Chim because he's having a little bit trouble understanding what really it is. And we're going to go ahead and use some of the info that we've already discussed about the wheel, right? And the way that Chim operates is basically a self-awareness that lets you see the circle, and then you turn it sideways so that you see an eye, like the capital letter I. It's a straight line. So the way that Vivek describes it is turning the wheel on its side. And this is where we get the I am all and all are we stuff that's thrown out there. And it's basically understanding that I exist in this universe and am therefore a part of everything in it. The limitations, though, are such that you're not the Godhead. You know, you understand that I have my own self-being. I am me, and I love everything that I can become. More direction on that? How are you feeling on where I'm going so far?
I think we lost Felix.
Yeah.
Yeah. He said he was going to do some chores and stuff.
I mean, I really don't have any arguments because that's really like
yeah. I mean,
understanding. I mean, well, I can't argue this thing because we know, but I don't have any like things to add because
it's honestly pretty straightforward.
You're just trying to keep it base, so those that need to understand at this level can. So.
Okay, so he's wondering about the achievement of Chim itself.
It's basically very Crowleyan in nature because Kirkbride takes a lot of his influence from it. It's you use love, which is not lowercase what we know of affection for people, but is love of doing what brings you joy, what is natural, what brings you fulfillment, what is natural for you to do, what is you in sense, and pertaining to it and becoming it and using it without will, without thinking, without focusing, with instinct, basically, to love yourself, both capital and lowercase, to understand everything and basically, in a very not so polite way of putting your narcissistic dick in everything and making yourself exist everywhere because you can't handle the fact that you don't exist.
I like to liken it to like the Buddhist idea of enlightenment. It's a gross oversimplification, I think, but it's under the whole almost like a Zen philosophy. I am nowhere and I am everywhere kind of mentality. And the reason you are nowhere is because this is within a dream. You are a figment of imagination, but you are also everywhere within this imagination. And once you realize that I exist regardless of the fact that I don't exist, then that is Kim or Chim or whatever. And the opposite being zero sum, where where your final conclusion is, well, either way I don't exist. And that realization becomes you don't exist and never have.
Yeah. So the mechanic of reaching Chim is the simplest way that I can put it is this: it's gaining so much knowledge of the universe that you're in that you understand it is a dream. And so, like Andrew was saying, it's kind of that precipice of I am and I am not. So you essentially hit this point where it's either you are going to zero sum, which is basically the mechanic of ego death, and it's self-attained, or you are going to persist on a higher level of existence because of all the knowledge that's running around in you. And we actually see a example of this in Skyrim, Septimus Sigmus. Cody brought this up, and I was kind of like, at first, and then he explained it, and it's like, oh shit, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So Hermaeus Mora, when Septimus Sigmus goes into that Dwemer vault, Hermaeus Mora showed Septimus the absolute reality of everything. And Septimus in that moment basically came to learn, I am just the figment of imagination walking through a dream of a being that I have never seen before, that cannot be seen because I'm just in its head, right? So the be all end all of Chim is you get to the precipice of all reality. It's like standing on the edge of the world, and either you jump and you fly away, or you fall and that's it. You're gone completely. So Chim is understanding I am lovingly. It's kind of a opposite of Charmat. So with Chim, you see reality and you understand I am in everything and everything is also within me. And I love it. I want to keep going through this because it suits me, essentially. And that's where we come to I am and I are all we. And it's basically just a unification process of combining all elements of the dream into the palm of your hand. The other point of the triangle is trying to become Charmat. I am and all are me. It's a very possessive feeling. It's very, I'm going to take it. It's all mine. I'm going to try and usurp the dream that this is happening in. It's going to be my dream now. We don't have to worry about that Godhead because it's mine. And I'm going to stay present in it because I'm selfish. And like I said, the third option is zero sum, like we see Septimus Sigmus do, where he just pops out of existence.
I like that. I like to imagine it makes that sound. It's literally
Yeah, just gone.
I don't know. While I would prefer the pop just for comedic value, but in all seriousness, I wish Septimus Cygnus didn't immediately turn to ash like the ghosts and stuff do. I highly enjoyed the fact that he was talking about everything was bright and it was beautiful and it was already blinding him because blinding realizations, blah 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 blah. But also in the fact of Septimus Cygnus's zero sum is poetically devastating and beautiful in its own sense because Hermaeus Mora gave him everything he wanted in that moment. He gave him all the knowledge that Septimus could ever ask for. And because Septimus could not accept the fact that he was a ruling king because, you know, he's a weakling, in more sense of the word than one, he just couldn't handle it. And I don't know, I just really have come to enjoy that little snippet of Skyrim more than anything.
Yeah, Adam Fields, one of the bigwigs from the Beyond Skyrim project. He hopped into our chat and he's always got a lot of good stuff to say. He just added in our chat log, I am and I are all we is equivocal to we are all I and thus I am. So this is kind of a explanation of the existence versus non-existence. You know, Chim, you go up and you're at the top of the tower looking at all of creation and saying, okay, either I can reconcile this and be okay with it and I exist, or I'm going to zero sum and become aware that I do not exist. It's the final mirror to pass in the fun house, as Adam calls it. So I think that's enough on that.
Hold on. I would like to theory craft and roll around the
You're in
idea.
the static, Cody. What's up?
As I was saying, I would like to theory craft and roll around the idea of what is the actual goal of the Sharmat. Some people, which an idea I subscribe to, is that the Sharmat wants to become the dreamer and wake up the dreamer and live life. But at the same time, I feel like that is reaching too low.
Backing up just real quick, Chim, Adam is saying is it's how to get to we. It's acknowledging we that introduces I. Yeah, it's basically a cyclic, unity of self, other, all that lets you continue reality. And it basically stems out of all of this exists, therefore I exist. As for the Sharmat, of course we don't have Luther to talk about this because he loves this. My understanding is, like I said, it's the Sharmat is trying to usurp the dreamer. It's an essence that lives outside of the dream, that is trying to take it all and make, not necessarily it's not trying to make itself a godhead. It is trying to absorb realities that are specked across the universe and take them into itself.
Oh, I just had a weird idea pop into my head. So, both in Morrowind and Skyrim, we are easily presented with the idea of a Sharmatic antagonist. Mirak, quite obviously, is one with his chanting he makes happen, is very much so similar to the poem of the Sharmat. What if, I don't want to say it because it's like, but at the same time, I kind of feel like it should be of, what if Mankar is himself Sharmatic because of, he is actively usurping things, he is actively creating things that can exist and are in mockery and would be better, and is constantly trying to take others and do other things. He is bringing others into his paradise, into his ideologies, into what he perceives to be perfection. What if not only is the overarching theme of Tess the downfall of man, but the Sharmat actively causing the downfall of man by making them fight him in a sense of multifaceted war, and so that he will always win.
I feel like Franzen would hit me for saying this, but I don't think that Mankar had quite that level of view. I don't think that he was operating on a transamoranthic eating contest. Mankar was trying to alter Tamriel into the way that he viewed specifically that continent as being, he talks about Tamriel Daedroth. He talks about, Lorcan being the creator as a Daedra, right? So I think Mankar's Paradise is sort of his way of trying to rectify the way that people venerate their predecessors. So I think it's more about trying to shift the focus of Aedra and Daedra. So it's operating on a lower level. It's talking about, I summed it up better.
I see what you're saying.
Veneration of Daedra versus Aedra. He's trying to say.
What you're saying. He wants to explain that these simple lines and classifications are, in essence, fucking bullshit, and would rather you understand. But there's just, I have this weird, not just like, oh, this is an idea, and I kind of like this, but it's like there's a weird hook back in the gears for me where it's like he might not have been a Sharmat, but I feel like he is on a path to be, and he was stopped in a sense. I'll definitely, whenever I have more ideas and shit, especially when I play through Oblivion again, I will definitely come back to you and we will discuss it, but we'll just pin it somewhere for now.
Franzen wrote quite a bit about this. I think he kind of extended a little bit of the ideology behind Mankar when he did Blackbird. The whole bit that he was going on about he who enters his own mother enters paradise. So he added a lot of substantiation to what we're talking about here, and it's been a long fucking while since I read it. So I'm a little bit out of my field talking about that. So I think we'll come back to this later, but definitely good food for thought. I'm not going to just completely wash it out saying, no, Mankar was just trying to switch perspectives. I think you're definitely onto something there with the, Mankar trying to do something a little bit greater on the level of Sharmat with the taking into him.
Yeah.
So we'll
definitely
play with that.
Oh, God. No, because, this whole idea of, a Sharmat being present every game can totally work because Jaegar, or Jaegar, whatever, he sort of fulfills the role that he is actively trying, and how I interpret it. I've not played Arena all the way through. Anyone who has, please feel free to correct me, but it also seems like he is doing this, but he is blinded by the way he perceives it, which every Sharmat is. They are blinded by their own perceptions because even though they perceive more, what they perceive is their lens. So
I would agree with a lot of what you're saying there, yeah.
I've not played Daggerfall, so I don't know if I want to, so I have no idea which could be Sharmatic and Daggerfall, but
Zurin.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely enjoying this idea of the Sharmat is actively trying to destroy the dream in a way that he can more easily usurp it, because it also fits in with what would a thief do to a king. Not only would they steal something from them, but they would also make it where the king could not fight as easily, which we also see with Boethia and Trinimac, where Bo, in a sense, has Mephala stab Trinimac, so he cannot as easily fight off Bo. So, yeah. Luther, I would really, really love your thoughts on this because you are typically considered to be one of the Charmat guys, and yeah.
What? Could you repeat the statement?
Basically, not only in tests do we have the overarching theme of man dying, but we also have a Charmatic figure in each main game that is actively trying to kill man and usurp the dream, and not only kill this dream through the deactivation of powers and the stabilization of it, but actively trying to take it himself in like a multifaceted war.
You pointing to Mankar Cameron as a Charmat?
Yeah, Mankar as a Charmat, Yeagar as a Charmat. Evan said Zurin would be the Charmat for Daggerfall. Mirak is definitely a Charmat, and the fact that the chanting almost perfectly mirrors the Charmat poem, and we already know Dagoth is.
I don't really know how I feel about that. The Charmats usually they follow a certain. The two confirmed ones, well, not canon, but the two that are close to Charmat are obviously Dagoth and Mirak, and they both have certain things that they look like and do. Each of them wears a mask, and each of them has a each of them has a poem, and also each of them has they have a way of controlling other people. Dagoth uses the Corporus as his way of controlling other people, and kind of creating this like church of self that he has, while Mirak uses his Thum to kind of take over the stones and then or use people to take over the stones. He uses his what's the shout called again? The one that controls. Yeah, the bend will shout. So he like uses that, and I think he uses the stones as kind of like as keystones to kind of cause people to hear his poem, his song, so to speak. So they have a song, they have a poem or poem, whatever you want to call it. They have a mask because their individuality doesn't matter anymore because they're a Charmat now, and they're part of like this greater whole. And they and they use people to kind of like as they try to spread their influence over other people. So, I mean, Dagon, obviously, he's not wearing a mask. I don't know if he has a poem. He has a book. He has several books. I mean, you could consider those poetic. He uses kind of like his cult to spread his teachings, but I don't know if he necessarily like controls them beyond that. He kind of like, he's freedom. He's closer to the idea of a hortator. Well, not really a hortator, but he uses the idea of freedom, which is more closely related to chaos and kind of free will, than to I'm going to control you and I'm going to use you to my ends. So I don't really know if each of the I don't know enough about the other two to be able to say, but those are generally the themes that a Charmat goes by. In my mind, that's what I see as a consistent thing that Charmat do, so I don't know. What do you think of that?
I mean, Evan basically had a very similar reputation of it, which you were up and about, but I was saying that Mankar might not be exactly Charmatic right now, but he definitely seems to be on the path with Paradise being taking in and controlling and making people him because of his Paradise. And
possibly, but I don't think you walk into the path of the Charmat. I think the Charmat finds you when you are most vulnerable, and then takes you. I think the Sharmat does that. It finds you, and then it turns you into itself, and then you are now kind of like, even though you don't realize you're under its control, you're totally under its control. So that's, I don't know, that's what I'm. Good Lord, everyone left.
Yeah, no, I can totally dig that. Like, I'm definitely gonna have to go and play through Oblivion again and like dissect his dialogue and the other games for better references and all that. But
Hi,
there's
I'm
just
back.
something about the concept that is just linking me to this idea of Sharmatic figures being the precipice.
But yeah, I mean, I think that the Sharmat has it's something that exists outside of the dreams. It wants to take as many dreams as it can and kind of turn them into itself and cause it to kind of orbit itself, and you know, all that stuff. That's what I interpret as the deaf the blind deaf moons, or whatever they in this poem. That's what I interpret as other dreams that he has consumed, he has taken into himself, and now they're part of him, sort of thing. So
I can post that. Sorry, I had to do something real quick, but yeah,
that's an interesting concept, though. I'd be interested to see if there's any other Sharmats. But I think he was working more on the side of Lorcan than he was on the side of the Dragon Gods, which I don't know if the Sharmat has any allegiances like that. He seems to be more about stasis than he is about chaos, but I feel like the Sharmat is also a completely alien thing, and I don't really like putting it into one of those two.
I always felt like the Sharmat was the adversary.
Well, or the aggregate is another way to put it, or is another way that they've. Actually, I think the adversary is Lorcan, because the people who are aligned towards Anuic tend to call Lorcan the adversary, I think.
Oh yeah, no, they definitely do. But
yeah, but I think
directly with the skull, Mirak is definitely referred to as the adversary.
Interesting.
And the adversary the adversary also always comes to seem to be linked to Akato's way. We have Dagoth being actively influencing the heart, which we know is Akatosh in most essence, and Mirak being Dragonborn of the Lost Halpa. And
I'd be interested to look into that, actually. Maybe I'm wrong. I always thought he was called the aggregate because he creates, like, he's the whole, or at least he wants to be the whole. He's trying to consume everything and put it inside himself.
It can definitely be both, as is the nature of Tesla, with metaphors being literal and physical skin. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna look this up because I'm curious now. Is there any reference to an aggregate?
No idea. But
I would definitely look into the skull myth, because that's where most of the stuff from Mirak comes.
So where did Andrew get to? He's missing now.
I don't know.
He just kind of plopped out. He does that.
And I mean, I'm gonna have to flop out,
my friend.
I think Evan went to go do Evan things.
Yeah, but Evan's still kind of here. I mean, he made a post in chat 2 minutes ago, and he's just muted himself. And of course, he's changed his image to the dick butt. So yeah, that's cool.
It's been the dick butt for like ever.
Okay.
I think actually since he found the dick butt, that has been his image for his Google account.
I mean, it's a beautiful image.
Mm-hmm.
It's magical.
Okay.
But because mobile, the chat doesn't work for me. What was this post in the chat?
Oh, here we go. In the new Hata of the Sphinx Moth Inquiry Tree, if anyone remembers that at all. I don't even remember.
That is a mouthful of a name.
I know. I think it was something that Kirkbride posted on God, I don't remember. He posted it on one of the forums or something like that, but he let's see, critical subplex inquest. It's like a list of beings. One of them is Dagoth. They call him Dagoth Sharmat, dream-sleeved inversion, where the biters live. Interesting. What are the biters again? He brought them here, pawn of the aggregate. I'm not sure what the biters are, though. Anyone?
Yeah,
no idea, man.
The only thing I can link biters to is Sermon 14 with biting it to better instruct the initiated and all that.
Yeah.
But I also just feel like that's a joke of Vivek making Molag Ball's dick more jagged.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I can, like, see. There's nothing else about biters.
And every time we have one of these hangouts, I kind of realize just how weird Tesla is.
It can get very odd.
Literally, anytime anyone asks me any weird lore facts, I just bring up the Rimonada and the Shawnee Edda.
Okay, there's biters mentioned in the Psyche creation myth. I don't know.
Biting, in a sense, could be related to eating.
Yeah.
Not fully taking, you can bite something but not actually take it. And,
well, in my Esrimer stuff, I mean, I created things that ate dreams, so I mean, who knows? Yeah, Evan, we are.
What Evan say?
I don't know. He said y'all motherfuckers talking about biters without me.
Yeah, we are.
So I don't know. I don't know what he has to say about biters. I'd be interested.
It just seems like there's a lot of joke things going in the mouth.
Yeah, I mean, there's different things too about it. I mean, you got the Psyche who apparently I'm gonna have to look into more of this, but they use biters as a something.
It's definitely the precursor for eating. So I don't know. My brain doesn't want to make connections at this point with it for some reason, but it'll happen.
And of course, it's biters in Sermon 14, but those are obviously people who are sucking cock. That's literally what's happening there.
One day we'll make you less timid, Luther.
Never. I've been timid all of my life.
What are you doing, Felix? You're just like leaning over in your chair.
He's dead.
No, I'm looking for something, or I'm trying to find it, but I'm just apparently incapable of remembering the right keywords.
Oh.
But don't worry, I'm here. I'm listening. Slowly getting frustrated with myself.
I do not have the topic list in front of me at
the phone call.
Time.
Put that shit away. Whatever, I give up.
Weakling.
Give up in my search. So next on the list. Okay, well, actually, I was away for a while. So what did you guys cover while I was off doing chores?
Basically, fucking like, goddamn, brain 2 words. Talked to Sharmat, quite a bit. We discussed one of the Magnigi. I have the top list in front of me now. Did we ever talk about the Maracati selective?
Don't think so. At least not when I was around.
We can definitely do that. We've discussed Chim. I don't know if we've discussed alphas. We've not discussed if Daedra and Adra are aware of alphas. They could always do Orson Makoto with me because I have weird things that I'm going to do with reinventing the story. If we had Dylan, we could talk about vampires and all that shit. Someone said they would have started a discussion about the relations between Bosmer and Altmer. Would be interesting, and Alkbury culture and all that, but Evan handled it with Fred. Jasser wanted to get into some shore stuff since it is the 11/11 and the anniversary of Scram.
Oh my god, so it is.
We could totally get into shore if anyone desires. I would like to, but it has been forever since I've read Shore Son of Shore.
Well, in honor of the release 6 years ago to this day of Skyrim, why don't we talk about what your favorite quest was and Stormcloak Victory? Am I right? Hashtag awesome.
Felix, I'm going to come to Canada and I'm going to drown you and suffocate you in poutine.
Bitch, please, I have a gun too.
Wait, a Canadian has a gun? What?
Actually, yeah, something like 1 in every 3 Canadians owns a firearm of some kind. I am part of that statistic.
I'm honestly surprised you have a gun.
Yeah, I'm a liberal who likes to hunt and have privileges. It's not a right up here, it's a privilege.
I mean, also, same. But, like, as you know the statistic, there's more guns in America than there are people.
Yeah. Y'all be crazy down there. But before we get into the real world, I say we talk about either Shore, which is something I don't really know a lot about, or the Maracati Selectives, which is also something I don't really know a lot about.
I only ever describe the Maracati Selectives of people who got hypnotized by monkey booty that's able to break dragons.
That's not what that was.
Okay, sorry guys, I was taking a call from my girlfriend. We are talking about Skyrim lore right now, correct? Or did we?
Yes.
We're debating whether to talk about the Maracati Selectives and breaking the dragon, or talking about Shore and Skyrim lore.
Let's do Shore, Son of Shore stuff and Skyrim because A, it's the 6th anniversary, so important stuff, and B, because we can actually use the some of the background information that we talked about in like the first hour and a half, 2 hours, because it's been a long time now. But we can use some of that.
Oh, sorry, continue.
We can use some of that info to talk about Shore, Son of Shore, and why it is Shore, Son of Shore specifically.
Yeah, because honestly, Shore, Son of Shore for me is even worse to understand than Coda or even the 36 lessons. I still do not get that thing, even though I've read through it like 5 times.
So
okay,
and I don't mean to read through it, like just try and get through it. It's like, okay, line by line, and it's taking me forever.
So the way
don't laugh at me, Cody.
I laugh at everything. The way Bertson explained it in a long dead writing group that should always stay dead because fuck that place. Someone was asking about it, and it's not son in the sense of we know as father, but it is Shore speaking to the next of Shore. It is never, oh, this is the new Shore. It's always the next, and it is always the old, and it's representing the cycle of war manifest metaphors and the dawn always being the dawn, no matter when it is the dawn, and how the cycle will always continue in the dawn, regardless of how time outside of it impacts it.
Okay, because what I sort of initially got or thought that I got from it was Shore, Son of Shore is like the next subgradient or the next Shezarine or something like that.
It's a myth echo. So I kind of spitballed this out last night while I was fucking sitting in the shower before work. Okay, so we were talking about rolling dreams and whatnot, right? And how Aldanu has a very conflicted psyche.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So his higher self likes to daydream about being a hero, about completing the hero cycle, about being one of these mythological figures from his past kind of deal, right? So Shore, father of Shore, is the previous, right? Shore, son of Shore. When we're talking about this all, we have to remember that Anu tries to drum himself up as this bigwig, dick-swinging motherfucker. And the way that I like to think about this is Shore, father of Shore, was a real mythic hero in Aldanu's life.
Okay.
His son, Shore, son of Shore, the next iteration thereof is Anu's daydream about him, right?
Okay.
Lorcan.
So you're saying that Lorcan is a myth echo of a hero that Anu the Godhead knew.
Yep.
Okay.
Or maybe not knew, but wanted to emulate.
Right. So
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Because ever since Ziggler posted that thing of Lorcan as the scapegoat, that has really resonated with me a lot.
Yeah, but he's only scapegoat in the Marish perspective.
Fair. But outside of the Marish perspective, he is no longer Lorcan.
Yeah, no, he's Shezar, or he's Shore, or help me on the Yokudan derivative. Is it Tall Papa?
Heretical thoughts say maybe. Otherwise, I believe Sep is the Lorcan derivative.
Yeah, that is.
No.
Yeah, but again, it's like if you look at the Yokudan lore a certain way, like as Todd Damrath has done, you could interpret Tall Papa as Lorcan, which honestly, the more I think about it, is kind of compelling, but I still see a lot of flaws with it, so I'm still working with that one.
Well, okay, so the deal is we got to look at this in a real-life perspective real quick. Perseus, Slayer of the Sea Serpent, right? That's Talos right there. Talos imagery, slaying the serpent, always, right? So who in Yokudan mythology slays the serpent, if anybody?
Well, technically the serpent is never slayed, but the closest is when Tall Papa hits the hunger out of Sep with a big stick.
And that is why I said Tall Papa originally instead of Sep.
Nah.
Because Talos is Lorcan.
He was trying to stay.
But also the big, but also the big stick could be seen as the Tower of Adamantia.
I don't.
Okay, that's where everything remember the Aedra came together and said, "How do we punish Lorcan?" They did that at the Adamantine Tower.
I don't think that we can look at the Yokudan mythos or creation myth as happening in Tamriel.
Well, yeah, because everything is flipped. So in Yokuda, it's the Anuic man, and so man is going to condemn the Lorcanic entity as going too far.
Yeah. So it's a different perspective. It's a different dream entirely that we're getting this creation myth from.
Felix, with what you were saying with Adamantine Tower being the big stick, that still works with Lorcan because without Lorcan, there'd be no Adamantine Tower and Akka, but Lorcan definitely wields Akka for his own uses, or depending on how heretical you are, her own uses.
See, because like I have a bunch of my own thoughts on like the Yokudan monomyth and how there's a lot of different stuff in it, even though there are a good amount of similarities. But I feel like that would take us too off topic right now. So if we have time later, we can discuss that. So we should get back on track to what Evan was saying with Shore, Son of Shore, and all the different iterations thereof. So how does that continue with regards to the actual narrative of Shore, Son of Shore, where it goes on about, but Shore, who is Son of Shore, did not understand, and so they just continued. I'm still kind of lost on that aspect.
The way I interpret it is the cycle of violence will always continue as long as you are continuing the cycle of violence. And
yes, cultic cycle.
With that as well, and that Anu and the whole Jubal thing of breaking out and all this fun stuff. It's
Shore, Son of Shore, yeah. It has to do with the Kalpic cycle, obviously, but it's like, isn't it more to do with like the old Shore passing the mantle to the new Shore, who becomes the next, the next Lorcan?
It's also
the way that Shore, Son of Shore, I feel like needs to be interpreted is it's a proto-Nordic creation myth kind of deal that is kind of a flavor text to explain the totem.
Yes.
So you got Shore the fox, that is Lorcan. He's kind of like the big daddy of it all, that glues everything together, and it's all in perspective of him, right? So it kind of branches down from there and gives a little bit of life to all of the pieces of the totem, like to Kine, to Bella, and it talks about his warring with the Manish adversaries.
Yeah.
What?
I'll have to reread it with that in mind, because.
Well, I mean, you also see the mirror between Shore and the dragon god, which would be, I think they called him Ald. No, what did they call him in that? Yeah, they called him.
It's a play on Alduin, and this all stems.
But it's mirroring because they like Sun and Stoon always are switching places, and Lorcan and Ald becomes Lorcan at one point in time, or he becomes Shore. It's really weird because like or the story changes from the perspective of Lorcan to Ald, and it doesn't seem like it happened. Like you get confused for a moment when you're reading it because the perspective changed, but nothing, like the scene didn't change, nothing changed. It was just like boom, it's different now.
That's definitely Kirkbride spitting in our faces about the fact that
they're mirror
Palpas, everyone plays musical chairs for the most part.
Well, yeah, and they're mirror brothers, so they're always like going to mirror each other. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of showing that there's a mirror there, that they're just two halves of the same coin. Yeah. So I mean, I'd have to reread it, but that's what I remember seeing in the text. I don't remember Daddy
really nailed it on the Bethsaw forums a while back, the Trans-Kalpic world-eating Nords.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And we talked about this last week. I wish Andrew was here because he remembers it just as well. One of the, I think, biggest pieces of Skyrim lore that we have in relation to Shore, Son of Shore, is you just talked about it, when the perspective switch between Ald and Lorcan, and it just becomes one and the same kind of deal. That is because at the end of Skyrim, when the last Dragonborn is fighting Alduin, right? It's just another iteration of that scene in Shore Son of Shore when the perspective switches between Lorcan and the dragon. And that means that at the end of Skyrim, when we're fighting Alduin in Sovngarde, the last Dragonborn is fighting a draconic image of himself.
Who has that meme ready that we posted on Wheels of Loads of "Stop hitting yourself"?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't have it on me, but I know I have it in a folder on my computer somewhere.
But that's definitely what's going on. It's literally "Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself."
Well, yeah, which is part of why the madness of Lorcan is a really interesting thing to me, and how that relates to Akatosh, because there's the Daedric Prince of Madness here at Gorth, but we also know Akatosh, and Aedra is rather mad himself. And this is also reflected in, I know for sure it's reflected in the Yokunan monomyth, but I feel it's also reflected a bit in the Cyrodiilic one as well, if I'm not mistaken.
It's definitely reflected.
Where it talks about, like, it talks about how, you know, I think it's in the Cyrodiilic one where it says, and Akatosh reached in and ripped out the heart of his twin brother or something like that, which has parallels with the Yokunan monomyth of eventually the hunger caused Satak to bite his own heart, like an attack on himself. So I know that the Yokunan myth is not the only one, but I can't remember if it's the Cyrodiilic one or another one. I'd have to check that.
So this all stems from the fact that Lorcan, he comes across as very, like, you know, back and forth. He's always changing perspectives, changing sides, changing ideals. And he's an agent of change, so that makes sense. But he always remembers. You know, he through each Kalpic cycle, from dream to dream, always remembers a little bit of the past, always remembers where he came from, how he came into being, and that doesn't quite sit right, you know? It'd be like remembering a past life.
Well, I remember that.
So it's trying to tell me Lorcan's just an existentialist.
I don't know about Lorcan, but I remember something about the other Aedra. Every Kalpa, they shed their skin and they become more aware of them, and they have more, like, what's the word? They have more agency over themselves and over, like, what's happening on Mundus. So things get more complicated as it keeps going, because they're trying to influence it.
So, since we're discussing Skyrim, and one of the biggest parts of one of Daria's biggest theories of the parabolic Magicka decay, do you think we should discuss that in a sense, since Skyrim is definitely the lowest point of that, and the possibilities of Test 6 showing a rebirth and a renaissance in sorcery and such?
Barry?
So the only issue with the Parabolic Kalpa is that she made that before Skyrim release, so it kind of shifted.
Well, you know, I mean, that was all the previous Kalpas, maybe, but not this one.
Well, I'm talking about, like, specifically the points in time that she put on the Parabolic Kalpa. It shifts to the left a little bit, so that it's like the events of Skyrim are, you know, they had to be kind of added in there.
Oh my god, I just realized something.
I think it still works, and we'll just shift it over so that Skyrim is the lowest point, like Cody said. And why I'm trying really hard to name search Shalador. Thank you. So yeah, we'll talk about Skyrim. You know, we very clearly see the Nords, as a static example, shifting away from their connection to Aetherius. You know, back in the day, Shalador had all this incredible power, because on the shifting timeline, they were closer than to the gods. They were closer to a higher level of the subgradients. So magic was a much more potent force back then. So we see kind of things dwindling down into just being like magic is a rudimentary tool instead of something to strive for, to make great, incredible gains with. Sorry, I'm reading a lot of stuff in the sidebar from Adam.
He's writing quite a bit.
Yeah. So kind of rewinding a little bit, nothing in the Aurbis is free of madness. It's an all-encompassing ordeal. You know, that links back to what we were talking about almost 2 hours ago with the split psyche of Aldanu, the dreamer. Kappas exist.
So I was thinking that since there is a theory that this is the last Kalpa, do you think that that means that the dream is ending? That the dream is dying?
Yes, the parabolic Kalpa.
Because it's kind of like your when people die, they start to it goes on forever sometimes, and it feels weird and kind of odd and euphoric and all that. I mean, I don't see that happening necessarily, but
so we'll talk about Parthenax a little bit here. He talks about you know, denying the egg of the next world, and that's a, you know, straight tie-in with the sermons and the egg imagery from there and all its meanings. So basically, the way that I understand it is when the last Dragonborn defeats Alduin, that halts the shifting of Kalpas, right?
yeah, the egg doesn't go back to an egg.
Yep. And so this is kind of the kickoff for the fall of Tamriel. This is like the huge event that allows everything that Kirkbride wrote about in Coda to start happening, because time has basically stagnated. So from here out, we're pretty much just going to see Akatosh further devolving into his own madness as he becomes more and more self-aware, biting off his wings and his legs to become a worm instead of a dragon.
Okay, because like in Coda, it says that Akatosh does have like these tiny little puny wings. They're still technically wings, but it's not anything impressive. He's a pathetic excuse for a dragon, in other words. And while this means that there is, you know, there is no end to this Kalpa, and therefore all you can get is decay, more or less, I feel like there's still something more to that. It's not just, you know, the Godhead suffering dementia or dying. I think it could also be, in a sense anyway, what Lorcan ultimately wanted. He wants people to get to this point to find a new solution. Maybe we found it, or maybe that'll be something Bethesda comes up with that's brand new, and we're like, oh, hey, didn't think about that right there.
Definitely, so, yeah.
It's open.
I'm speaking from what we have thus far, and I think that the be-all, end-all of Skyrim is that there's no more change for this dream.
It's all going to be entropic. Well, that's change, though. Entropy is change.
Yeah. The thing is, it's a stagnant time wherein change is happening in space, but time has stood still. So we're all hung up on that one point where the future stopped existing, but everything's going to try and vie for it, which is Lorcan's plan. You know, I think that Lorcan definitely intended for the fight between the Dragonborn and Alduin to happen. It's all part of his grand scheme, which is why more and more I've started to allow the argument that the Dragonborn is indeed a Shezarine.
Well, they could be both, right? Like they could be Dragonborn and Shezrin. And I think it was Todd Dameron, actually, who said something really interesting that I've been rolling around in my head for some time, which is that by bringing around this stasis in Skyrim by defeating Alduin, that is actually in itself a great act of change into stasis, and no one's going to really know how to process that.
Yeah, it's a huge dogmatic shift.
Possible, but it's done by a guy who's Dragonborn, or perhaps Shezrin, or perhaps both. You're sort of seeing an echo of sorts of Satakal within that, where two aspects of opposing forces, Lorkhan and Akatosh, are found in this one mortal being who kind of does, in a weird way, both aspects, change and stasis at the same time.
Processing. Yeah, I think this kind of all stems back to what I was talking about with the last Dragonborn fighting a different version of themselves. There in Sovngarde, and it allows for this huge dogmatic shift. Change into, whoa, wait, shit, we stopped. Suddenly it's Anuic. Suddenly we're dealing with stasis instead of change, because we look back at the previous games, and there's always, I can't speak to the earlier ones because all my lore from them is fucking red on TIL, and I haven't played fucking Arena. I messed around with early Daggerfall but didn't get super far. But correct me if I'm wrong here, we have a projection of some sort from Tiber, who is just an agent of Lorkhan, showing up to kind of guide the hero along, right?
When? In what game?
Well, I mean, Morrowind, we've got...
Right, there's Wolf.
In Morrowind, we have Tiber coming down and wishing the Nerevarin good luck before he goes to fight Dagoth-Ur, right?
Yeah.
So that I look at as Lorkhan giving his blessing to Nerevar to destroy the heart of Red Mountain.
Destroy the heart, freeze it.
He hits it and sends it home. So this is an example of violence, in which case Lorkhan is saying, this is my plan, go and send that heart back home. Collapse Red Tower. Start to destroy what I worked so hard to create.
Well, actually, I wouldn't say it's quite that in terms of destroy what I worked so hard to create. I always got the vibe from Wolf when he's saying things like, oh, I'm just an old man. You know, same with the Empire. We're both old. Maybe it's time for a change. Maybe you young ones will figure out the change. If anything, I feel that is Tiber / Lorkhan's blessing, in the sense of, you know what, it's okay to tear this down because I know I haven't succeeded. Maybe you or someone else among your peers will figure it out. That's always how I interpreted Wolf in Morrowind. Yeah,
I agree. That's a better way of saying what I was getting at. It's kind of an unbinding ritual, you know, where the Aurbis is being sort of dismantled just a little bit so that change can continue to happen and the old can be replaced by the new, and it all filters down to Jubal down the line, right?
Theoretically, yeah.
Okay. In Oblivion, Pelennor is the guide stone for the champion of Cyrodiil. Pelennor was a Shezrin. So we've got another piece of Lorkhan coming down to our hero and saying, hey, unbind the old, make way for the new.
Okay, but let's look. I would rather like to keep this focus. I mean, not to dismiss that that's not a good point or anything, but in Morrowind, that was the main quest. Do we have anything in relation to the main quest of Oblivion involving the hero of Kvatch?
Yes, because the hero of Kvatch ends up mantling Pelinal to become Shezarine, so that he has that agency to start dismantling things, which culminates in the unbinding of the dragon when the red diamond is fractured by Martin.
But wait,
because Martin could not have gotten to
Knights
where
of
he
the
was.
Nine?
What's up?
How do we mantle Pelinal before Knights of the Nine? I'm not following you there. Like if
Knights of the Nine. Knights of the Nine is how we become Shezarine. It was added later, but I don't really care about timelines. I'm looking at the whole, right?
Okay.
And personally, I think that Oblivion, you have to have all DLC there and played through in order to really make sense of the main quest, right?
All right.
So we have the hero of Kvatch, a prisoner who is free to chooses to become a Shezarine. So he takes Pelinal's strength, and this is important too, the Shivering Isles. Sheogorath is the divine spark of Lorkhan's creation, right? Lorkhan's spark of creation.
Something along those lines. I think the exact wording was he was I think the Sithis-shaped hole that occurred when Lorkhan's divine spark was removed, but I could be misremembering that. I'm not sure.
That sounds right, but what I'm getting at is it links back to Lorkhan, yeah?
Right. In that case, I would actually say that perhaps a better example that in a way is like a perfect narrative follow-up from Morrowind is at the end of Morrowind, of the main quest of Morrowind anyway, is when Wolf shows up and says, hey, I'm an old man of the Empire, things should maybe change. At the beginning of Oblivion, so if you played these like in sequence and do them in sequence as a story, the very beginning of Oblivion, you get the literal old man of the Empire showing up saying, it's you, the one from my dreams. In other words, yeah, these visions that I've seen, you're going to be the one who's going to change shit. Yeah. And I figure that actually, instead of like Martin Septim and us mantling Pelinal, which again, like is dope. I'm not denying or challenging any of that, but I'm feeling that maybe it's a better narrative example that Uriel Septim, a man who's descended allegedly from Tiber Septim, is also the one who's seen the future and says, no, actually, you know what? I got to die for this stuff to kind of move forward. I feel that's more appropriate than the mantling Pelinal aspect, but that's just me personally.
I would agree. Narrative standpoint, that definitely, it jives a lot more. What I was getting at, though, is the prisoner is the hero of Kvatch. He's taking these pieces of Lorkhan and making them one with himself to gain the agency to do what the Emperor is trying to make happen, yeah?
Okay, I can see where you're coming from now. Gotcha.
Right? So the prisoner mantles Pelinal, ascends to the seat of Mad God, and that's what gives him the agency to help Martin unbind the dragon.
Right, yeah, that massive change to things.
Okay. So in
Which
Morrowind,
was brought about by an avatar of Akatosh, go figure.
Yeah. In Morrowind and in Oblivion, we have these two examples of Lorkhan coming down and saying, hey, go that way. And
or
kind of,
I wouldn't even so much say go that way, but hey, this like more of like a warning of, hey, shit's about to get real, so you need to kind of go this way.
Yeah, gear up, buddy.
Yeah, it's more like a warning and a call to action at the same time. Like, shit's gonna get real, get your gun.
Yep. Now, Skyrim. We have the last Dragonborn, and there's a ghost somewhere in there. I'm fucking skipping on names, but the ghost fucking calls us Hjalti.
Oh wait, right. It's like somewhere in
it's Old Heraldin Inn near the battleground where Hjalti shouted down the walls.
Yeah. Yeah, and Necken just put it in the chat. Ghost of Ultralden. So we get to Sovngarde, and we don't see the Dragon of the North. We don't see anything about Shore. We see his son.
Because he's supposed to be the missing god, though, right? That's why his throne is empty.
Yes, but we walk into that hall, and suddenly we have that same kind of power that Shore might have to kick the living fuck all out of Alduin. So Lorcan is missing from Skyrim because we're playing as him, or an agent thereof.
I would definitely say it's an agent thereof, because as we were talking about not too long ago in one of the groups, it was MK who posted the Lorcan and how each letter is a different Chezarine in time. And the last one, N, is the new man, who we haven't actually seen yet in game. So I figure that it's not so much that we're definitely playing as Lorcan, but perhaps his penultimate agent, perhaps.
Yeah, the way that I would argue it is the agent that allows for the N, the new man, to enact the final stages of Lorcan's plan. And I think that new man N is going to be Jubal.
Right, okay, so we've got that figured out. So then what's next?
Akavir.
Just keep going east. I don't know much about Akavir. I would say you, Todd, maybe Franzen would be the people to talk to, but Todd and Franzen are not here. So how are we gonna crack that egg?
It was mentioned, that Jubal is a Nerevarin, and so it's like, well, why the fuck did Nerevar, or the Nerevarin that we play in Morrowind, sail to Akavir? And I think the answer that I like to that one is he was trying to look at it in the scope, basically scouting out his own future creation kind of deal. It was getting a lay of the land for, okay, what am I going to create? And he was looking at it to say, what am I going to change whenever I dream of this? And that's why, Jubal was able to successfully ascend to Amaranth.
Right, okay, but then what about our Nerevarins that we played as in Morrowind?
They die to be reincarnated.
I asked, no one said that they wanted
it. Reincarnated.
No, while I was standing there, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. You would have while standing there, I would have made them.
What?
I don't know. I think Cody's got a different conversation going. Okay. So answering, shit, I lost my train of thought.
I just said how, okay, why would our Nerevarins die in order to be reincarnated? For what purpose, why, and to whom?
Okay, yeah. So it's a kind of a domino effect. So we've got our Nerevarin, who goes to Akavir after the events of Morrowind. And then at some point, we're not really sure on it. This is why I say he died. It loops back in such a way that the many faces of Nerevar are able to fight Numidium on landfall day 1.
Right, yeah, a bunch of them are piloting a Kulikon.
Yeah.
Although I would also argue that just as many Nerevarins did not do that as Nerevarins who did, based on the nature of time and choice and whatnot.
Yeah, because they're a prisoner.
If there's a theory, because I think someone else also brought this up, when I was first really getting into the meta lore, about how there's an infinite number of Nerevarins who went down that path and fulfilled their destiny, and there are an infinite number of Nerevarins who did not. No, fuck that prophecy. I'm gonna go be a bandit, or they got fucked up by that naked dude on that bridge. There's there's as many paths to victory as there were to utter defeat and failure. And so I feel that, all the Nerevarines piloting a Kulikon is, okay, those that decided to do that, yes, but then there's also like probably an infinite number who decided, nah, fuck that shit. That's just my personal take on it, though.
And Adam's rejection of that is, I kind of agree with it, because it's like the Nerevarine is meant to go to Akavir to see the future that he will beget. And that's all thanks to Azura. Adam's refutation is, there's been plenty of Nerevarines prior. Those who die will be brought back by Azura until her needs have been met. The Nerevarine will always end up in Akavir over an infinite amount of time.
Okay, so why is it that we end up in Akavir if we're supposed to be the people defending Morrowind?
Because, like I said, Lorcan was there with his guiding hand to say, hey, this dream, it has to go somewhere else. It's got to change, because that's all I know is change. So we have that guiding hand pushing, just ever-tipping dominoes towards that wedding between Jubal and Vivek.
Okay, but here's a counterpoint to what Adam said is, okay, yeah, there's been plenty of Nerevarines and false Nerevarines and all that. I get that, but if the prophecies are therefore fulfilled by the completing of the prophecy at the end of Morrowind, then there's no need for further Nerevarines. So why would all those who die in Landfall Day 1 be reincarnated if the prophecy is already complete?
Okay, so the prophecy in Morrowind is all the lead-in to Jubal. Right? That is the end goal, is to be reincarnated as Jubal. So the Nerevarine prophecy isn't fulfilled until Jubal is possible.
Okay, I can see that. Like, I'm following that logic train. The problem is the destination of that logic train. I'm not sure that's the right destination because, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the original Nerevarine prophecy was that they would drive out the Outlanders from Morrowind, correct?
Correct.
And free the heart of Lorcan and cast down the false gods.
Correct.
So that's the prophecy.
Yeah.
Is that completed theoretically, like in the aftermath, right? Like, Vivek, whoever dies, Amalek and Sothasil are dead. By Skyrim, we see that they're now venerated as the Reclamations, Mephala, Boethia, and who's the third one?
Azura.
Azura, thank you very much. Is that not all done, or is the fact that we still see Almalexia, Sothasil, Dagothur chilling out in Tomorrowwind on Masser a sign of it's not actually finished?
So, okay, the prophecy that we fulfill in Morrowind is making all of that stuff possible, like I just said. So, the false gods have to fall. They have to stop being venerated in order for Vivek to come back and make that superhero return. They have to fall. The Outlanders have to be pushed out. So in order for everything that's going on in Coda to happen, the Nerevarine prophecy has to remain, kind of vaguely fulfilled.
So in a gray area, a gray maybe, in other words?
And Adam is saying Morrowind's Nerevarine always fails in MK's Coda. They go to Akavir to reboot the dream, as all ruling kings are prone to do.
Okay.
My dissension is that I really think that the Nerevarine prophecy has to be fulfilled for those dominoes to start falling. So
But you see, I feel that like if those dominoes start falling, all we see in the future is that basically the same dominoes still exist. So there was no point to it. So like that's why they keep coming back. Or if we do fulfill the prophecy at first in the game Morrowind, then there's no need for further reincarnation and everything should have been changed. But we see emphatically in Coda that it's not. And so that to me is one of the things about Coda I'm still trying to wrap my head around of, well, wait, how the fuck is this possible if we supposedly did this however many centuries or eras ago it was? That's where I'm still trying to connect the dots.
So I think Adam and I are attacking it from opposing perspectives. He is saying that by the Nerevarines' failures in the Third Era, Coda is made possible so that Jubal can complete the prophecy and be the one true reincarnation of Nerevar that ended that cycle. Well, I'm saying that it actually stems all from Lorcan, and that the Nerevarine completes his hero myth cycle and completes his prophecy, which then tilts dominoes in such a way that Coda happens. As for ESO, I unfortunately have not made it very far into all of the new Morrowind stuff, so I can't really talk to that.
Right.
I should probably get on that shit because Clockwork City has a lot of relevant stuff for this topic.
Finally, like an insight into South of Sill. So I wish I had the time and the money to play that, but alas. And actually, speaking of time, it is dinner time for me. So I'll probably be back after, but you won't see me for a bit.
It's been almost 4 fucking hours. I think we actually might be wrapping up.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So then what topics should we lay out perhaps as a continuation for the next chat? Because we talked about the Aurbis, the Magna Gay, a little bit about like the Dawn era, but only tangentially. And then I believe we talked about Shore, Son of Shore. Correct me if I'm missing anything.
That's the capstones. I think for the next chat, I would like to revisit the Skyrim portion since we kind of glazed over that and ended up talking about different stuff that ended on Nerevar. So I think we should come back to Skyrim and kind of hash out some more stuff. And I'll prepare some notes about Shore, Son of Shore, some of Parthenax's insights.
I would.
And we'll kind of revisit this last like half-hour chunk.
All right.
Talk about each point more in depth.
Oh wow! I love how when we're about to get off, Jasper joins.
Just as we're about to break up the Tunisia.
Right on. I'm gonna hit stop broadcast.